This conference will now be recorded.
Informally with staff and invited guests. The board encourages members of the public to attend work sessions and listen to the discussion, but there's generally no opportunity for public comment. Members of the public wishing to address the board do so during the board's regularly scheduled meetings. First item is to discuss the formal agenda. Has everybody had an opportunity to see what we have on our work session and our regular? Okay. Any questions? No. Okay. Then we will go ahead and move into our first topic on the work session agenda. That is the Clatsop Behavioral Healthcare presentation on page 4. We have 20 minutes assigned for this, and Amy Baker, Director of CBH, is with us, and I'll go ahead and turn it over to her.
Hi, everybody. It's nice to see you. I see that I've been made presenter. I have no idea if I can figure out how to do this.
We believe in you, Amy.
Yeah, I'm glad somebody does. Come on. Teresa, I don't suppose you can help me.
You want me to pull it up for you?
Yes, I do.
Okay. It'll just take me a minute, so if you want to go ahead and start.
Okay. Good afternoon, commissioners. I appreciate your willingness to have myself, Amy Baker, Executive Director of Clatsop Behavioral Healthcare, and Shira Mirala, our Chief Clinicals Officer, come and present to you on what all is happening in our world. I have, we just have some basic data that Teresa is going to share with you that you probably already have in your packet. But basically,
it's up.
Just to give you a snapshot, between August 2020 and July 2021, Clatsop Behavioral Healthcare served 1,900 individuals, and that was through all of our services, including developmental disabilities, mobile crisis, outpatient services, kids, adults. That's the whole kit and caboodle. We had 53,541 units of service, 2,309,335 minutes of service, and about an average of 1,200 minutes of service per client. So that's really context around understanding kind of the breadth and scope of what we did during that year. Go ahead, next slide, please. So this is a metric that we track pretty regularly, and it's the number of folks who are coming through our front door. Typically, March and October tend to be busy months for us. I've seen this seasonally ever since I've been in this field. October is often, I can't say to it for 2020, but is often a busier month because of kids being back in school. And March is a busier month because of the onset of spring, and then also there's just more days in the month. One of the things that we want to talk to you about is the opening of our Rapid Access Center that I believe I presented to you the last time I was here. But we did a soft opening in July, and word of mouth is there, and the folks are coming in. So our Rapid Access Center is basically no appointment necessary, just walk in. We'll see you whether you have the right kind of insurance or not, and we have 2 folks who are master's level clinicians, one of them being the manager, and then we also have recovery allies for folks who have substance use disorders. And I'm going to turn it over to Shira to talk a little bit about what we've seen so far in early trends.
Sure. Yeah, so, originally, like the way that you would access care in CVH would be to call our call center and then be scheduled for a regular outpatient appointment. And Amy and I have learned that if those appointments were scheduled for more than 3 days out, that often folks wouldn't show up for those appointments. And so we really wanted to do something to improve client retention and to provide services and care to clients that were in need in the moment. So we've seen that clinic be highly utilized. We did not formally open, but just sort of through our client population, folks know that they can walk in now and be seen. So we're seeing people come in who are experiencing active suicidal ideation, who are being able to be seen without law enforcement involvement or involvement from the emergency departments, which is a large goal of this clinic, so that they're actually coming to behavioral health providers for behavioral health needs. They're getting assessed and getting safety planned, and then we're able to follow up with those clients, for ongoing care and coordination of care. Folks who are coming in who are actively intoxicated or actively using, we're able to send them to detox or get them connected with care, or at least form relationships with our recovery ally team, so we can work on getting them engaged and working towards sobriety. So yes, that team is already really busy, and we're not even open yet. We're looking forward to really seeing how the community can utilize that clinic. And again, the goal being that we're providing behavioral health services when there's behavioral health needs, and allowing for the emergency department and law enforcement to focus on the things that they really need to be able to focus on.
Thank you. And so we expect that the numbers that you see in the March, April, May, June, we expect those to go up, and that's one thing we're going to track because of this. Next slide, please. So this is another metric that we currently track, and that is what we have, and I think I've shared this with you all before. One of the things that we know to be true is that the longer people stay in services, the more likely they are to have improvement. And so we track when folks come in and how long they stay in care. And so according to this slide, there was a 3-month period between October and December 31st where we intaked about 207 clients. 6 months after that date, 29 had discharged, 18 had completed treatment, 77 were still active, and 19 transferred either internally or externally. One of the things that we know is true is that there's a significant number of folks who drop off after the first or second session. And so we're hoping that with the Rapid Access Center, that we'll be able to retain clients longer, because we'll be available to them. Usually people show up to see us when they're in a crisis. There are very few people who are like, hey, you know what? I think I'm going to start counseling today because that'd be good for me. Nobody does that. They get to the end of their rope, and either they push themselves or somebody else pushes them, and then they come find us. And our trick, not our trick, although it sometimes feels like a trick, our job is to hold on to them as long as possible so that they can actually experience some improvement. So this is our data around access and engagement. It's pretty comparable to national data. It's really similar. We want to see if we can improve on this, and to see if we can hold on to clients longer, by making their entry into care easier. Next slide, please. And this is just this is informational around the population of folks that we're seeing. It's the demographic of clients that we're seeing are probably more reflective of the Medicaid population and less reflective of the overall Clatsop County demographic, if that makes sense. Next slide, please. So this is So this is kind of the meat part of the presentation, but we have a lot of stuff going on right now, which is really good for the community. It's really good for us as an organization, and my staff kind of hate me right now because I've got too many plates spinning. But we, as you all know, we purchased a property in Seaside. That has been held up in terms of like city planning, but we're moving forward on that now. We expect to open the 5-bed shelter probably in, I'm guessing, December. On the 18th, I'm closing on a duplex in Warrenton that we're going to open for. It's a duplex with 4 bedrooms per unit. So we'll have 8 beds of recovery housing for people who are discharging from detox or other residential programs and are trying to get into sober housing. And we'll have a women's unit and a men's unit. I already talked to you about the Rapid Access Center. Staff recruitment and retention, this is a challenge that we're seeing all over the state right now. Our AOCMHP, which is sort of the comparable to AOC, did a survey of how many open positions we have across the state, and it's like well over 500 masters, people who have a master's degree in counseling. And so, like all of us, hiring has been extremely challenging, in part because of the housing situation, and also in part because I just think people who have been in caretaking, caregiving, service industry types of positions are tired. So, I also wanted to talk about the mobile crisis expansion. I know that Clatsop Behavioral Health Care is part of Clatsop County's strategic planning around having clinicians be more available to law enforcement so that we have clinical staff responding to crisis rather than law enforcement professionals. And so we have developed a plan for what happens if we receive enough funding to be able to hire 2 clinicians, or if we receive enough funding to be able to hire 4 clinicians. Either way, we're going to work on embedding those folks into law enforcement so that we can do co-response to situations, so that we would have, if we have 4 staff, we would have 1 likely embedded in Astoria Police Department into their into police, and then also down in Seaside. We think that law enforcement would be much more willing and likely to want to co-respond to situations if we're right there on site. And I'm just waiting for word on funding for that particular project. I will say it's gonna take us a little while to hire, because we discovered that with the Rapid Access Center, it took us about 6 months to fill those positions. I'm sure you all know that there was a historic amount of funding that was allocated to behavioral health this year, and we are actively participating in conversations about that. I do think you as commissioners should be aware of some of the conversation that's happening in Salem, in that the Oregon Health Authority really wants to make the funding a competitive process. And they want for, I mean, imagine having a competitive process for public health, so that you have competing entities going after public health functions. And of course, what OHA doesn't understand is that in rural communities such as ours, there is nobody else who's going to be able to do some of the stuff that we are. And so I don't know if there's a way to insert yourself into those conversations, but it is, the state allocated about $180 million for both housing and secure residential treatment facilities. And I think most of that is going to go competitively out to bid. And so we'll apply for it. And I feel like we have a good chance of getting some of that funding, but I also think it's really short-sighted, and it doesn't allow for us to have systems of care, especially in small rural communities where you may have organizations that don't have grant writers and those types of things. So anyway, so that's did I do that in 20 minutes? I feel like I did it in about 7.5. Do folks have questions for me?
I'm looking at 4:15, so you did pretty well, Amy. And
Oh my God.
Ira, I see that Commissioner Thompson has her hand up. Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, sir. So Amy, good. And I hope you're taking care of yourself as well. You're the linchpin in this, and it's a tough job. So just want to acknowledge that and thank you. In terms of AOC's, the AOC Policy Committee on Health and Human Services, it's one I don't attend very often because I have a conflict with another commitment. I don't know if there's another commissioner who wants to attend that meeting, but that's the place to talk about this issue, to raise the issue of geographic equity. We hear about diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's considered racial and ethnic. It isn't considered geographic, or the wealth gap between the rich and the poor, which primarily means the money is in Portland and the administrative infrastructure is in Portland, and the crumbs come here. That's a little strong, but whatever we can do to help you, if you let us know and it funnels through the county manager, we'll find ways to get it worked up through the policy people at AOC to help you out, because whatever we can do, we want to.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Any other questions, comments from the commission? Any questions from staff? Thank you very much, Amy, for the presentation, Director Baker, and we'll go ahead and move on in our agenda. Thanks again for being here. Thanks for the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is the Human Services Advisory Council membership recommendations on page 11. And we'll turn it over to Hannah Mather, who will make this presentation.
Good evening, Commissioners. I am here on behalf of the Human Services Advisory Council to present 2 membership recommendations. In June of this year, Linda Crandall resigned and 2 additional vacancies were left open. In July, the Council advertised the 3 vacancies and in result obtained 2 applications. The following applications were reviewed and recommended as follows. Amber Bowman for a 3-year term expiring February 28th, 2025, and Rebecca Larson, who would also serve a 3-year term expiring February 28th, 2025. If you have any questions about these memberships, please let me know. Thank you for your time, and I hope all of you have a wonderful evening.
Great, thank you, Hannah. Any questions? Okay, not seeing any. Thanks again, Hannah, for the presentation. We'll move on to the
Chair Cleela, Commissioner Webb had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you. Commissioner Webb.
Yeah, I noticed that the proposed membership and the current members are not very geographically dispersed. Is there a reason for that? You know, we have 2 districts, commissioner districts that are not represented at all, and you know, with 5 of the members being from District 1. I'm not sure how, I mean, let me ask my fellow commissioners if they feel the same way. I'm always looking for geographic distribution on our advisory committee, but maybe this is a case where it's not as necessary, but I don't know. You know, I don't know. I realize that most of the providers that we fund through this committee are probably located in Astoria and in Seaside. but I always wonder about those whose service areas is beyond it, and whether or not we're providing adequately. It's just kind of a thought. I'm welcome to anybody else's input on this issue.
I see that Commissioner Thompson has her hand up and would like to respond.
Well, I appreciate Commissioner Webb raising the issue, and generally speaking, I prefer geographic diversity. As I look at the membership of this committee, I know Dr. Mushin has been a county commissioner and considers the whole county. Linda Dugan Winstanley works over the whole county. Pretty sure Julia Weinberg does as well. And so my sense is that we have people, even though they may not live geographically in a equally dispersed pattern that fits the outline of the county commission districts, I'm pretty comfortable that they will in fact consider the needs of the whole county, but I appreciate you raising the question. Thank you.
I do as well. I think geographic diversity is important. I hope we remember that when we talk about the next item as well, which is planning commission appointments. Any other comments, questions? We'll move on to the next. Thank you very much, Hannah. Have a good night. Next item, planning commission appointments. Myrna Patrick replacement, and Gail Henriksen is here and she can give our report. Page 17.
Yes. Good evening, commissioners. Thank you. Gail Henriksen, Community Development Director. This evening, we're just bringing an informational item before you to talk about the Planning Commission appointments. In February of this year, Myrna Patrick did resign her seat on the Planning Commission, and we've had several discussions following our initial call for appointments or applications back in February of this year to discuss the matter. And for a variety of reasons, we haven't reached a decision point yet. We extended the recruitment and are now in continual recruitment where our advertisement is always up. We hold on to applications and keep them on file for 2 years now. We did have, at the time this agenda item was prepared, we had 5 applicants. Once the item was submitted, 2 of the applicants withdrew their applications, and those would be Randolph Tad Peterson and Brian Pogue, leaving us 3 applicants at this point. Also on October 27th, the board will have an item coming before them regarding the appointment of Robert Strickland, and depending upon the how that item turns out and the decision of the commission, there may be an additional vacancy as well on the Planning Commission. So at that point, we feel that it's probably prudent for us, since our applications are old, 2 of our applicants have withdrawn, just to continue recruiting as we move forward. And we just wanted to present you with the applications we have so far, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Director Henriksen. Any questions? Commissioner Thompson.
Well, thank you, sir. I don't really have a question. I understand if I were the commissioner from District 1, I might be having heartburn right now as I looked around and I didn't see anybody from my part of the world on this. I don't know what to do about that, because as I look at the 3 people who are remaining, the person I'm most familiar with in terms of the caliber and the relevance of his skill set, it's Mike Magyar. Oh, look, he's again from District 3. Now, it can't, well, you know, how do we have balance and quality? So I don't know how we adjust to deal with that, but I would hate to have an excellent candidate who's well qualified, who's skilled, who's already served on that planning commission and is now ready to come back, who has a very good temperament and understands the scope of authority and not going beyond it, and what is the role and how to perform it. So, but I don't want to give you heartburn. So there you go.
No, Commissioner Thompson, your point is well taken. And my comment was a little tongue in cheek. Nobody has applied from District 1. And I think there might be other opportunities down the road where someone does apply from District 1. I would like to see representation on the commission from my district eventually. Commissioner Banks.
I think my comment is just a follow-up to what Commissioner Thompson and yourself have already expressed. I think that this is a good time to actively recruit ourselves as commissioners and try to get able-bodied and sound representation or applicants from our districts. I was sad to see Tad removed his application from the Planning Commission, but I know that there are other people out there that are interested in serving and volunteering for our community. And I think it's a great idea right now to reopen that application process and try to make a more robust pool of applicants. Not that the applicants that are already there and hanging on tight aren't of quality, but just so that we have the opportunity, I think, for a few districts to do a little active recruitment and see if we can get some people from other districts that aren't represented.
Thank you, Commissioner Banks. I do want to be fair to those that have applied and that have been waiting to, that we don't leave this so open-ended that people don't know, when we're going to make a decision. So I think we have to be, communicate kind of a timeline and when we plan to actually appoint someone. Commissioner Banks.
And yeah, I agree with that statement wholeheartedly. I feel like that is probably one of the reasons why we have lost applicants out of the pool, was because of this very open-ended, drawn-out process. And so if we can give a firm, you will start this day, or the decision will be made this day, I think that delay of decision caused our applicants some frustration.
I agree, Commissioner Banks. Any other comments, questions? What's our direction to our community development director then?
Keep it open.
Keep it open. Commissioner Toyoka had a hand up there.
Again, just another comment based on, continued discussion. I know we need representation from District 1 just because every district has a little bit of uniqueness in their own planning, how we're going to develop our own communities. How each city has basically, Gerhardt, Warrenton, Seaside, they all have development plans. So to have that voice on the Planning Commission is important. And then the other thing is not only just diversity of location, but background. It's nice to see a professional surveyor, a builder, just an environmentalist. Then you have a diverse set of knowledge that can come together. For two weighted on one side, this side, and in any particular genre, that doesn't give us a good scope to work with either. So the diversity of backgrounds, geography. But I think the thing that is in our hole right now as we go forward with the new applicants is we do have a roles and responsibility. We do have definitions of what the Planning Commission, is expectations and roles. So if you put that document in front of somebody who's going to apply for it, say, here's the expectation, roles, and responsibility, that provides clarity as saying, yes, I will, or no, I won't, want to engage in the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Toyoka. I think your point is well taken. County Manager Boone.
Chair Quilla, members of the board, what I might suggest, if this makes sense for the board, is that we identify maybe 30 days or so that we will keep it open for, and then that would give all of us kind of a timeline. And then I'm thinking that if that application deadline is sometime, let's just say for the sake of argument, sometime the week of November 15th through the 19th, then that would give staff time to then process those applications and then come back to your board at the 1st of December so that we can have that conversation and make an appointment. So thank you.
I think entirely reasonable, Commissioner Banks.
I just have an ask or request from staff. If you could send a link to the application page to our email address to just make it a little easier on us to be able to share with our constituents, that would be great.
Any other questions, comments? Gail, anything additional you need from us?
No, thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to the statewide planning goals overview. On page 33, we have 80 minutes carved out for this, and I'll turn it back over to our community development director.
Okay, and I need Teresa to make me the presenter, please.
All right, just a moment.
Okay. All right, thank you. And while we're waiting for that, I do want to thank the board for the extra time today and also on the 27th. It's very much appreciated, and I hope that it will be beneficial to you as well. So. Okay, so we've been spending a lot of time talking about our comprehensive plan update, and I know that we've done a lot of iterations of goals 1 through 4 and goal 5 as well. And I'm hoping that at least, yes?
Do you want to make it just the one slide? We can see both sides.
Oh, you can see both sides. Hold on here.
Thank you.
That's right. We don't want to ruin the suspense of the upcoming slides.
There you go.
Exactly. We don't want to preview.
So hopefully tonight we'll get to talk about something a little bit more beyond goal 5, but we do have our 2 sessions to work through the goals. And the reason I asked for the additional time, and again, appreciate you granting it, is I want everyone to have the same foundation that we're all working from, and so that we understand what our parameters will be in terms of making changes to the comprehensive plan and things that we will have to address, and to get some ideas thrown out for the board, not for answers this evening, but for things for you to put into your thinking queue as we move forward over the next 10 months of this process. And I know 10 months sounds like a long time, but that's the end of it. So it gives us all a goal to work for. So our question is, why do we even bother to go through this process? Why are we spending so much time and energy on updating our comprehensive plan, besides the fact that it's 40 years old and it just needs to be updated? So the whole reason we do comprehensive planning in the land use world is because it's a chance for us to come together as a community, to talk about what our community vision is, and to identify issues that are coming up, either right now that need to be addressed immediately, or trends that we see that are going to affect us over the planning period. In this case, our planning period is 20 years. We're looking out to 2040. So it's not just talking about what's happening today and how we fix what's happening today, but trying to forecast what we can reasonably see coming at us down the road. We also want to make sure that we're being effective and efficient with our use of resources. You know, we have a lot of resource land here. About 85% of our county is zoned for forest lands. We also have farming resource lands. We have a limited supply of water. We have air quality issues that we want to talk about. And also our roads are resources, and our humans are resources as well. So we want to make sure that we're being very efficient in how we work with those items as we think about planning. We also want to provide some certainty for property owners. We want them to be able to know what they're going to expect in terms of what they can do with their property. And even though we don't necessarily like to put limitations on what people can do, we will have some obligations under state statute that we just can't open it up for everything everywhere. So we will have some parameters that we ourselves have to work in as well. And we just want to be overall good stewards of our public tax dollars. And in terms of infrastructure, especially, for example, roads are probably the biggest county infrastructure expense that we have, because we don't operate really sewer or water districts, with very small exceptions. but just being effective in how we are using those tax dollars moving forward over the next 20 years. So I think the most important thing that we also need to take away from this is that because we haven't done this process for 40 years, I think there's a perception sometimes that people may think that we're not going to get another shot at this for 40 years. And everybody's trying to get everything perfect and trying to get everything addressed at one time. And we have to remember that the work that we're doing doesn't have to be perfect. This isn't a one-shot, take-all deal. We can go anytime and amend our comprehensive plan. We don't have to wait 40 years. If we want to, we can come back after this process and update it every month. And I think everybody would really like that. But we just have to keep in mind, it doesn't have to be perfect. We just have to do the best that we can at this time. So when we talk about planning, it's an iterative process. And I know we hear this all the time, but it truly, truly is. And that's how it should be done ideally. It shouldn't sit for 40 years and then we come back and pick up the process. We should be constantly working in this oddly shaped square circle. So for example, if the county set a goal that said, we want every house in the county to be painted purple, that's our goal. That's what we're going to achieve. So we look around and we say, well, probably right now only a quarter of the houses are painted purple. So we know that in the next 20 years, we've got to do some paint job on 75% of those houses to get them all be purple. But then we look around and we say, well, instead of purple, what are our alternatives? And we notice that maybe 50% of the houses are already painted green. So we say, okay, that cuts down our work. We're going to go with green houses instead. So we put a law into place that says every new house is going to be painted green. We put that into action. The permits come in. We look at the shade of green. We sign off on it. They build their house. We keep going. Year or two down the road, we notice that there's an increase in, accidental break-ins and breaking and entering. And why is that? It's because people can't find their house in the dark because they're all painted green now. So we know that we've got an issue. We know that our progress hasn't been what we wanted. We haven't reached the outcome we were looking for. So we go back, we say, okay, too many greenhouses in the dark, not a good idea. We set a new goal that says, well, maybe we'll go with 50% yellow and 50% green, and we start the process over. So this is really ideally how we should be looking at land use planning here in the county. I know that we've let it set for a while and we're picking up, and it makes it a harder process, but hopefully as we move forward and keep reviewing the plan, every 5 to 7 years, we can avoid this situation again. So I will stop there. Are there any questions right now at this point?
Commissioner Thompson, I knew you had one.
Well, just to get it off my chest, because I was reading the material, I looked at the statewide planning goals, and I said, well, but a lot of this stuff comes from 1975 and 1988. So when we're looking at going forward, how do we gel with something that in my mind is more out of date than what we're going to be doing? I don't know how that works, and it'll help me figure out how to relate to what you're saying if I understand that, I think.
Okay, so yeah, and you've given me a perfect segue. Our planning system here in the state of Oregon is very old, and it's quite mature, and it goes back over 100 years with just basic zoning. And 1973 is the magic year when everything changed. That was when Senate Bill 100 was adopted, and that created the Land Development, Land Conservation and Development Commission. And their primary goal back in 73 and still today is the protection of farm, forest, and these natural resource lands. And it's very structured, and it directs growth and urban type services to urban areas. And it has its pros and cons. It's what has helped protect a lot of our forest lands and farmlands throughout the state. But it has also had some it's created some indirect impacts in terms, I think, of our housing crisis, because we are limited in how and where we can develop new homes. I can't speak directly, Commissioner Thompson, to when the last time the state went through their own statewide planning goals and updated them. I know that if you have an opportunity to read the actual text of each goal, some of them are very generally worded, and it's more you need to coordinate with surrounding jurisdictions. You need to look at what you have in terms of water capacity, air capacity, land capacity when making your decisions. Your primary focus is still going to be directing growth to urban areas and protecting your conservation and resource lands. So I know that doesn't really answer your question. I'm not sure I have a good answer for it, but it is a very valid point. So we initially, as the county, adopted our first comprehensive plan back in 1980, and it took us 4 years of back and forth negotiations for the state to finally acknowledge that plan on September 7th, 1984. So planning is a very slow process. So. And then in terms of our statewide planning goals, again, there are 19 of them. Of them, only one does not apply, and that's goal 15, which deals with the Willamette River area. So we're very blessed in that we have a lot of resources here in the county. It gives us a lot of opportunity. It also gives us a lot of challenges, and there's a lot of work that we have to do when we work on our comprehensive plan that many other counties don't have to go through. In addition to that, we had our 6 planning area plans that we worked on and still have, and that's the 6 that we all know: Clatsop Plains, LC Jewell, Seaside Rural, Northeast, Lewis and Clark, and Southwest Coastal. So all of this is in the process of being updated right now. So I'm going to plunge into goal 1, which we have spent quite a bit of time talking about. And if anybody was able to attend our Southwest Coastal CAC meeting this morning, they spent a lot of time discussing this issue as well. The item that is underneath goal 1 in the bold text, that's the actual text from the statewide goal 1 about what the purpose of that goal is. And with goal 1, we have 6 requirements, maybe 7 if I can count correctly, 7 that we have to do. We have to create a citizen involvement program. We have to give people opportunity to be involved in the land use planning process. We have to establish a way to have two-way communications between our governing bodies and our appointed bodies and the public themselves. We have to be able as staff to present all the technical information in a way that is accessible to everybody who wants to review it and understand it. And then we have to make sure, which we do through our budget every year, that there's support for the planning efforts that the county wants to do. And then we have to have a citizen committee for citizen involvement. So a couple of weeks ago, I attended a planning commissioner training that DLCD put on, and there was a statement made that citizen engagement does not mean citizen agreement. And I thought that was pretty appropriate and something that we should all keep in the back of our head, that it's important to hear all the voices, but in the end, there may be several different viewpoints and several different ways of approaching something, and sometimes you can only pick one way to do it. So it's important to listen, because you may change your mind or learn something new or consider something you hadn't thought of before. But it doesn't always mean that because you participate, your voice will win. So anyway, circling back to our Committee for Citizen Involvement. Here in Clatsop County since 1999, it's been our Planning Commission. And the items in blue at the bottom of my slides are some of the bigger policy issues that we will not talk about tonight, but these are the things I want to have you put into your thinking queue as we move forward. And I know we've talked about this several times in our work sessions, but over the next 20 years, when we get ready to adopt our plan, we're going to need to make a decision about who is going to be our CCI. Is it going to be the board, which you can do legally under state statute? Are we going to continue to have the Planning Commission do that? Or are we looking at maybe some new sort of standalone entity or coalition of citizen advisory committees? And again, not looking for an answer this evening, but just want you to consider that as we go forward. So as far as goal 1 goes, we do have a public involvement program. And it may not be as robust as we would like. It may not be the ideal, but this is what we're operating with right now. So we do have a large number of public notices that go out for anything that's a land use application and decision. And that written notice goes out to adjacent property owners. We send those out. When there are public hearings, either before the Planning Commission or our hearings officer, not only do we have public written notices, but then we also do a published ad. We're required to post the property. We have required at times applicant neighborhood meetings before an application even comes in, if we feel that it's something that is going to be have a significant impact on a neighborhood or surrounding properties. We also send written notice to recognized community organizations and neighborhood associations. And then all of our documents are posted on the county website. They're on our state e-permitting system, which is available 24/7 around the clock. So when you can't sleep at 3 in the morning, you can go look up all the building permits and conditional use permits that the county is processing. Also, as specific items come up, like our comp plan update, the board has appointed ad hoc committees. We've had one for tsunami hazard overlay, our farm and forest code updates. We had the wetlands advisory committee. So as special needs arise, the board has this ability to expand the public input gathering methods. So I just wanted to show you what we're operating under right now. And I'm going to pause there and see if there are any questions about goal 1.
Any questions from the commission? Commissioner?
Well, it's been pointed out, and I certainly agree that back in the day, we called it citizen participation. Now we call it community engagement. That's a whole different thing. And how do we balance our job as members of the governing body who really take everybody into account and dealing with people who say, look, I put my time and my skill and my energy and my attention into literally years of study on this issue so I can effectively advise you, and I think you ought to do what I say. And this is not a question for staff as much as it is for my colleagues. I mean, I don't know about you, but I really wrestle with this one. I want to respect, and I do respect the work of devoted volunteers, and their scope or their focus may be different. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Commissioner Webb?
Yeah, well, in the last 2 years, I don't think I've ever heard a member of any of our citizen advisory committees say the sentence that you just quoted, Commissioner Thompson. I think everybody went in, every citizen that I've ever worked with goes into a process. They know they don't have the final vote. They put in a lot of hard work, and what goes. They know that. I certainly haven't heard anybody, and I've attended a lot of the meetings relating to the comp plan process, and I've never heard a citizen express that at all. I think they know that they don't have the final vote. So I guess I don't understand your concern. I'm certainly not worried about it.
I've heard it frequently in the meetings I've attended in email. I quoted the email last time, so maybe I should have stuck to the meetings you went to.
Well, maybe you should bring us that in writing. I mean, I certainly have just never heard that kind of feelings from any of our advice. I don't think I've ever heard that from any of our advisory groups.
It's in the board packet from last meeting's board packet. So maybe this isn't productive, but that's just what I wrestle with.
Okay, I'd love an exact citation so I could go back to that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from the commission, questions? Not, we'll go ahead and continue on.
All right, so moving along to goal 2. Goal 2 covers land use planning, and our statewide goal breaks it into 2 parts. The first one is we have to put together a framework, which we've done back in 1980, that basically designates all the land in unincorporated county for some sort of use and future development. And it could be residential, it can be commercial, industrial, it could be conservation of wetlands, it can be forest use, farm use. So we have 6 different categories. So we've taken care of that. It's always good to go back and reassess, ideally every 5 to 7 years, to make sure that what we thought was going to happen is occurring, and if not, then we need to go back and adjust how we are designating our lands. And we will talk more about this in some of the other goals later on, either this evening or in 2 weeks. The other part of goal 2 is the exceptions area, and this is basically how to get out of a goal. So when the statewide land use planning system was set up in 1973, obviously development had occurred all throughout the state. And so now the state has come in and told the counties and the cities, well, you're going to have to comply with these goals. But sometimes you just couldn't make a goal fit. I mean, we have, think of the Swenson area, where it's supposed to be rural land, but you've got some more intense development out there. You've got some commercial development, you've got a lot of housing, you've got gas stations, grocery stores, restaurants. So not quite rural, not quite urban. So when you land in that type of a situation, you have 3 options. You can tell the state that we've already developed the land, there are physically structures on there and buildings, we're not going to go tear them down, we're not going to tell people to tear them down, so you need to give us an exception from this goal. And usually it's farmland or forest land. The other thing is, another way that you can do this is that you've pretty much, because of maybe what's developed around some property, that if you've got, say, industrial development all around 200 acres of land, it may not be practical to now say, well, we're going to keep this farmland, or 200 might be too big of an estimate, but say 20 acres. It doesn't make sense to now say we're going to keep this farmland and forest land. So you basically, again, are going to ask the state, please give us a pass on this one. The third way you get out of a goal is what's called a reasons exception. And this is basically where you go to the state and you say, well, we can't do it because we need to put housing here, and we can't put housing here because of X, and we can't put housing here because of Y, and this is really the only place that we can do it. And so the state looks at that and then says, okay, fine, we will give you an exception to that. So in the history of Clatsop County so far, throughout our various updates to the plan, the original plan, and different applications that may have come in from private property owners, we have taken exceptions to our Goal 3, ag lands, Goal 4, forest lands, 5, which is the open space scenic potpourri goal, Goal 4, which is urbanization, 16, and 18. So it's not uncommon to do this, and we have done it, not recently, but we have done it in the past. And there are ways and reasons when you would want to do this. And we will probably talk a lot more about this when we get to Goal 10, which is housing. So the other thing with Goal 2 that I wanted to spend a little bit of time on, because I know there's been some discussion during our work sessions, is our 6 planning districts and planning area districts. So there's been discussion about perhaps changing those boundaries so that they're coterminous and move with the commissioner district lines every 10 years as those are redistricted. So the planning areas were originally set up pretty much based on geologic concerns and societal and cultural concerns. And when this 1976, when we knew that we were going to have to start doing a comprehensive plan, and the county set up these planning area citizen advisory committees, there were 8 of them actually, and it included the Hammond area, and it broke down more finely, I think, some of the areas on the Clatsop Plains. And at one point, there was even a plan put together for the lower river and the islands out in the Columbia. And there was a plan done there, and there was a planning area for that. So these boundaries do shift. It's not unusual to shift them. But one thing I did want to show, let me go back here. The black lines here are your commissioner districts, and then the colored areas are the various planning areas that we have right now. No, I take that other way around, reverse that. The colored areas are your commissioner districts, the black lines are our planning areas. So you can see right now, District 1 doesn't cover any of our planning areas because it's pretty much all incorporated. There's a tiny smidge down here, which may be a mapping error, of Clatsop Plains that is in District 1, but it is a tiny, tiny smidge. There might be 10 people living there. So I put together a slide that kind of looks at who represents what now. And for the Clatsop Plains, District 1 has that tiny smidge, and most of it's in District 2, and there's a portion in District 5. And you can read through the table, I won't read for you. But you can see that some of the planning areas are represented by 3 or 4 commissioners, and some of them only have 1. So as you consider changing the boundaries and looking at that, just remember when we go back to District 1, even as our boundaries shift now in 2021, there's still probably not going to be a planning area in District 1. So I just wanted to plant that seed to give you something to think about. Don't need a decision tonight or any discussion, but just something to be aware of, again, as we look at this. So that is everything I have on goal 2. So I will stop again for any questions.
Any questions? I have to exit for a minute. We have a fire drill, so I'll be back in just a bit.
Okay, if we have no questions, all right, we'll move on to goal 3. Goal 3 is our agricultural lands, which does not necessarily mean any place that there's a farm. Goal 3 is very specific in that it requires the counties to identify high-value farmland. And in Clatsop County, based on information from the Natural Resources Conservation Services, we classify anything with Class 1 or Class 2 soils as being high-value farmland. And so those lands back in 1980 got zoned as EFU lands, exclusive farm use. And the policies that we put into Goal 3 and the background narrative are all focused on exclusive farm use zones. So I'll use the example of Blackberry Bog Farm. They recently had an application in for some projects out there. They are obviously a farm, working production farm, but they are not zoned EFU. They are zoned one of our residential agriculture zones. So when we think about policies and how we can support activities like that, we have to remember to separate our exclusive farm use activities from all the other farming activities that are occurring throughout the county. And when we did our original plan in 1980, there was a presumption made that on exclusive farm use lands, small little farms were not viable, that we wanted to encourage at that time farms to consolidate so that we would have bigger, larger conglomerate types of entities doing our farm work here in the county. And I think over the past 40 years that has changed considerably, and it's been demonstrated by the number of small farms that I see at our farmers market on Sunday, or that you can just see driving down the road in most cases. In 2018, we did, through help with the Department of Land Conservation and Development, we also updated our farm and forest regulations because we had not kept up with changes to state statute, and our regulations were fairly out of date. And so we had a technical assistance grant from DLCD, and they came in, reviewed our ordinances, and in 2018 we did finally make those updates to our code. So we are pretty much in compliance in terms of our zoning code with the requirements of Goal 3 and Goal 4. And so I will stop there for questions about Goal 3.
Okay.
I think Commissioner Thompson, I think Commissioner Webb had a question.
Am I not?
No, I forgot. Mark's still on his fire drill. That means that I'm the chair. So Commissioner Webb, please proceed. Thank you, Planning Director.
Okay. Could you give us just a brief review, a little bit of what happened in those 2018 revisions? I'm sorry.
No, I'm trying to think. So what had happened was, I believe we actually got our technical assistance grant around 2016 or 17 before I came on board. When I came here, we had already established an ad hoc committee that the board appointed to go through the requirements that we needed to do and where we had latitude to make specific changes unique to Clatsop County, and where we could adopt those state regulations, adapt them, I mean. That committee looked at that and made those recommendations. So that committee met once after I came, and then their work was done. The thing that stands out primarily for me on those updates was the agritourism issue.
Oh, okay.
And that was a new thing that was happening in the state at that time, and the state had adopted some statutes to address it, what you could and could not do on your high value farmland, because people were wanting, obviously we have the wineries out in Willamette Valley and elsewhere, but the wineries were holding events and weddings, and then there were tap rooms, and then there were tasting rooms and all sorts of different things going on. So the state, I think, wanted to get a handle on it and put together agritourism requirements. One of the recommendations that came out of the Farm Forest Committee was to take those same EFU agritourism requirements and allow people in our RA zones, like Blackberry Bog, who just went through this process, to do agritourism as well. So that was the primary change that came out of it. I know there were others, but that one sticks in my head.
Okay, good. That actually would have been a follow-up question. So thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay, seeing no additional questions, let's see here. We will move on to Goal 4, our favorite goal. We love this goal. We can never talk enough about Goal 4. So Goal 4 is all about forest lands. And as I mentioned earlier, about 80% of our county is actually designated as forest resource land. It's a very important component of what happens here in the county. And again, when we talk about forest lands, we are talking about lands that are designated as such in our comprehensive plan, and they will be zoned either F80 or they will be zoned AF, which is agriculture forestry, which can be either farm use or forest use, depending on how it's been developed and the soils. So the whole reason for statewide Goal 4 is to preserve our working forest lands and to make sure that we are also considering how soil is managed, the air, the water, wildlife habitat, and also to make sure that we retain some opportunities for recreational use of our forest lands as well. So it covers a wide variety of activities. It's not just timber harvesting and timber production, so we need to keep that in mind. The way that forest land is identified, there are two ways to do it. One is the U.S. Forest Service actually measures productivity in terms of, I believe it's cubic feet or cubic yards of wood fiber production. Ooh, my computer just shut down. I've got to unlock it. The other way is that, you know, if the county itself makes a judgment that the forest land itself would be more suitable to be preserved or set aside as watershed protection or for some sort of other activity. Goal 4, like Goal 3 has the right to farm requirements, which are in place to protect farmers from encroaching development. Goal 4 also has similar requirements in terms of building housing on forest lands. And it's very difficult to build a house on either farmland or forest land, and it's deliberately made that way. And then, of course, we have the Forest Practices Act, which floats above our comprehensive plan and basically supersedes any regulations we have when it comes to commercial activities involving harvesting or management or production of timber here in the state. So I know that we've had a lot of discussion, at least at the Citizen Advisory Committee level, about how Forest Practices Act interlaces with watershed protection and wildlife habitat and salmon habitat. And I know that there's a lot of discussion at the state level about how this all plays out. We are in the middle of a habitat conservation plan, which I believe is under NEPA review yet. And we've had in 2020, this memorandum of understanding that was signed between representatives from environmental organizations and from the timber industry. And then we have all these floating parts, and the Lynn County lawsuit is the other piece of that. So there's a lot that's lingering out there that potentially will affect the county. And so it's important that we acknowledge that, I think, in our comprehensive plan, and I think we've discussed this, but as we get more information, it may be that a year or two down the road, we need to go back into Goal 4 because we may have to make some changes depending on the outcome of all these different things that are happening right now. So when it comes to the policies in Goal 4, and I think the board is pretty aware of it, I think the committees have become more aware of this as we've progressed through this process, but we cannot, as a county, without setting ourselves up for significant litigation, put in policies that are going to try to go above and beyond what Forest Practices Act requires when it comes to these commercial timber activities. So we have the ability on non-resource lands and non-commercial timber activities to, you know, if the board were to go in that direction, to put in more stringent requirements. But when it comes to the commercial timber harvest, which I think is the major concern I'm hearing from the citizen advisory committees, we cannot have that ability to do that. It's something that would have to be changed at the state level through the legislature. So, and I shall pause there to get a drink of water, but also to see if there's any questions from the board at this point on Goal 4. Okay, so let's move on to Goal 5. Goal 5, as we've looked at before, is a potpourri of things. It's the place where everything that didn't fit in a different goal gets placed. And so it's a very large goal, and ours covers a whole volume. And just like our 19 statewide planning goals, 18 of them apply here. Of our 12 inventoried required inventories and our 3 optional but recommended inventories, we only have 1 that is not required in ours, which is the federal wild and scenic rivers. So we don't have one of those. We do have state scenic waterways here, and all the other inventories apply. And so we have original inventories from 1980. And as we've gone through this process, the citizen advisory committees have looked at and identified other resources that might the county might want to add to its inventories. So looking at this, we don't necessarily have the option of opting out of these on the left-hand side. We're going to have to inventory. What we do with our inventory is our decision, but we do have to conduct the inventories. So as the committees have moved forward, they've identified these resources that we should take a closer look at. It doesn't mean that we're going to include them in the inventory at this point, because we have not conducted the analysis needed to determine whether it's significant. But they have identified things that we should look at in the future. And so once we go through that process and we find a resource that we think is significant locally as a community, then we have 3 choices of what we do with it. So we either put together standards and regulations that help preserve the resource, whether it's a wetland or a riparian area or bald eagle habitat or a historic site or some sort of archaeological site. That's one option. We work to preserve it. The other option is, the second option is that we can look at it and just say, okay, we know this is there, but we're just going to let development continue around it however it happens. And that's another option that we have. The third option is you try to find a way to balance the two, and that you recognize that you have something that is important and perhaps non-renewable, but on the other hand, you just can't stop all development, or maybe development had encroached in the past to the point where you'll never have a pristine resource, but you still want to be able to balance some protection, some level of standard of protection for the resource, but still let development occur. So you're maybe not taking away property rights. For example, in the case of a wetland, Department of State Lands will allow people to go in and fill wetlands, but there's a mitigation cost to it. So some jurisdictions and some places in our code require buffers and setbacks from wetlands. So there are different ways of approaching it. But it's a very complex goal, and I think I've said this before, but it's probably the one I think every community should start with, because it's the one where you identify really the resources and the issues of interest and importance to the community, because it does cover so much. So it's probably a good starting point. Plus, once you get through goal 5, everything else is a piece of cake. So it's probably better to start that way. But you'll see at the bottom of the slide, I put another thinking cue question or things to think about. I know that we've had a lot of discussion here at the board during our work sessions about wetlands and how we want to handle them in terms of, a safe harbor approach, a more individualized, tailored approach, and what do we do with some of the local wetland inventories that have been prepared but never approved by the board, or what do we do with our wetland advisory committee recommendations that were presented to the board, a different board, back in 2017. So to provide a little bit of an update, staff did work with CREST during the last fiscal year to do an update to the infamous Duncan Thomas report. Duncan Thomas prepared this report in 1983 that identified wetland areas in the primarily Clatsop Plains area, and the Northeast Planning area, there's a few. But this is now the thing that is set in stone in our comp plan and goal 5, 50 years later. And so we did work with CREST. We're reviewing the draft of their updated report now. But if we go, as we go forward, not if, but as we go forward, the board will also need to look at the Duncan Thomas report as well as our citizen advisory committees. And then we will have some decisions to make as a community about what to do with our resource in terms of wetlands, for example. Is that something we preserve, something we just allow development to go on around, or do we find some sort of middle ground and try to balance that? So again, not anything that needs discussion tonight, but just put it away for when you can't sleep in the middle of the night and you can wake up and think about this. So I'm going to stop there. That is goal 5 in a very small nutshell, but I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Any questions?
So I need more questions so I can get a drink of water.
Yeah, I agree with your suggestion about starting with goal 5. I think that's probably a very wise thing to do with how involved it is.
Yeah. All right. Well, if we've got no questions here on goal.
Well, could I? Okay,
yeah.
so
No.
Commissioner Bangs and I
Commissioner Thompson.
Well, Commissioner Bangs, were you first? Go ahead. Okay. Well, I just want to know. I listened to a meeting where someone proposed an addition as a feature in the neighborhood that would be added to the inventory, and I thought, okay, what kind of ground truthing or what kind of standards are applied before we just accept kind of any old thing? Like if I said the creek that runs on the side of my house, because I wanted to protect that for my own benefit. I mean, how do we deal with, I want to say, objectivity and standards and common good in this regard?
Yeah, so there is an official way that something is designated as or determined to be significant. And if I do air quotes one more time this night, somebody needs to virtually reach out and slap my hand. But yeah, it's called an EC report. It's an ESEE, and it's environmental, social, economic, and energy. And you are basically taking the item, the resource that has been proposed to be inventoried and included on your inventory as significant, and you're going to look at the different aspects of this. And it's kind of a drawn out process, but and I apologize, I wasn't quite prepared to talk about EC tonight, but it's a way that you objectively go and look at a resource to determine its value. And part of it is also community input, because what may be important to me may not be important to you. And that's why we start with those conversations about what do we agree is important. If I want to nominate my doghouse, it's really important to me, but unless everybody in my community agrees and says Gail's doghouse is the best one in the neighborhood and we need to protect it, then it doesn't warrant that additional next step of moving up to the EC evaluation.
Okay, Commissioner Banks, sorry about that. Go ahead.
Oh, no problem. I was just curious. It would be interesting or nice to see that within each of these goals or within each of these, within each of these goals, if we are able to write in what regulatory statute at the state level is in control, or what state agency is our overhead umbrella in regards to each of these individual topics, especially in goal 5, when it is such a, I like your word, potpourri, and frankly we should just rename it potpourri, but to just identify that for those laymen who are reading this document to be able to refer to, okay, this is the overhead state agency that is in charge of the state regulation level.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. We can certainly do that. Not all of these will have a state agency that we'll be working with or reviewing or using their data, but it's a very good idea. And each of our goals in the statewide goal will be broken down into an implementation section as well that helps identify what steps a jurisdiction should be taking as we look at each goal and put our policies in place and then base our implementing ordinances on them. So that might be something useful as well. And I was actually thinking about that when I put my presentation together this afternoon. So good suggestion.
Commissioner,
Did you say Commissioner Webb?
I
Chair?
did.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Well, Gail, in the material that it was actually sent to us ahead of time in our packet, you did a lot of that. You had a matrix that talked about pertinent laws, all the ORS citations. And incidentally, I would really love to have a copy of what you're presenting us with tonight, because I think it's a really great synopsis of, of all the other materials, the background that you gave us. But you had, I think it was at the kind of the beginning of your staff report, that you cited all the ORS that were applicable. So I think it's all there, because I sort of looked up some of them, and it was very useful. It really gave, it's the direct citation between the goal and what ORS mandates within it. So I thought that was really, and so we've got that in our packet. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Webb. Commissioner Banks.
Just a point of clarification, I wasn't talking about our packet. It was just a suggestion for when we are complete with our county comprehensive plan, that within our comprehensive plan, that we also add state agency or over umbrella ORS law next to, say, waterways and so on and so forth. But thank you, Commissioner Webb. Yes, it was very, very well written out, and I appreciate all of Gail's hard work.
Thank you, Commissioner Banks. And I agree with your suggestion. Gail, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so now we get to move into new territory. This is exciting. So we're going to move on to Goal 6, which is air, water, and land resources quality. And so you read the title and you think EPA, DEQ, and nobody is really sure what land resources quality means or how you measure it. But it includes a lot more than just air and water quality. It also looks at solid waste disposal, discharges, noise, which is something we don't always think about when we think about air, water, and land quality. We're also looking at pollutants and contaminants. So this goal is pretty much going to be constricted by state and federal regulations regarding groundwater and air quality and discharges. But we also have some leeway to look at and address our local issues. And so my thought-provoking thinking cue comment at the end of this slide is we've talked a lot about Clatsop Plains in conjunction with the strategic plan and looking at water studies for both quantity and quality of the water in that area, and then also the impacts that might be occurring because of the use of septic systems in this area that is environmentally sensitive along our coastal lakes, and there are wetlands in that area as well. And I know during the discussion with the strategic plan, there had been, at least in our environmental quality group, discussion about did we think that in the future we might need to have some sort of moratorium in place as we looked at these issues and determine what was actually happening and what might be happening in the near future and what steps we might need to address it. So we do have other, I'm sure, throughout the county, water resources is a huge issue with wells that run dry in the summer, or springs that run dry in the summer months, and looking at at that in particular, I think water is probably one of the biggest issues locally that we have the ability to address in our comprehensive plan. So I'm going to stop there for a moment and see if there's any questions about goal 6.
Not seeing any.
Not seeing any. Yeah, goal 6 isn't the most exciting goal in the bunch, but we love it anyway. Goal 7 is much more action-packed. It deals with areas subject to natural disasters and hazards, and this could be anything that from floods, landslides, earthquakes, the tsunami and Cascadia rising. It also includes wildfires, which is becoming more and more of a concern in Clatsop County, and also looks at things like coastal erosion. And I know that in Commissioner Thompson's district, we see this occurring. And over the past winter with some of the king tides and the storms that we had, I know that we here in the planning department were getting calls from people who had concerns and wanted to build seawalls or put in riprap because the storms were washing in huge logs onto their decks and into their houses. Another area that isn't called out specifically in the statewide planning goal, but could be lumped under the other natural hazards heading is we do get these winter storms, and how do we prepare for them? How do we address them? And goal 7 requires the county to consider the effects of all these different types of hazards, and then to think about what we're going to allow in areas where the hazard occurs. And one of the things that I put in my list of things for us to think about in the future is a few years back, before I took over this position, there was a lot of work done on a tsunami overlay zone. And as I understand it, it went almost all the way through the entire process, almost to adoption. And then at some point, there was community discussion that this wasn't the right time, perhaps, to address this issue. And the work was put aside and has not been picked back up in the 4 years that I've been here. And so as we see more development pressures occurring along the coast, and we think about where the tsunami is likely to go. And we had a big discussion about this during our resiliency project discussions with the public and with the board. We know that the tsunami is something that's going to happen, and we know that it will have an impact on the county. The question is just what steps does the county want to take to mitigate or relocate development away from those areas where that might occur. And again, not an answer that needs to be here tonight, but something we need to think about because when we submit our plan back to the state, when we're through with this process, the state's going to look and see how we've addressed all these issues, and are we in compliance with the statewide planning goals and the ORS and the OAR and everything else, all the layers in between. So I just threw that out there for some thought. Thank you.
Gail, I see that Commissioner Thompson has a question.
Well, speaking of grasping a nettle, let me just describe the experience of sitting on the dais and listening to that jam-packed room full of very angry, very upset people who were concerned about their property values, who were concerned about their insurance coverage, who were concerned, I mean, this would take, I think, a very deft outreach by a public engagement process to hear all of the concerns of affected property owners and other interested parties. This is definitely going to be some very carefully crafted response to, I think, some very divergent opinions in the county. I respect what you're saying, and I think it's time to pick it up, but it was extremely emotional, and that's why it was dropped so handily. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson, for that background. Any other comments, questions? Okay, Gail.
Okay, so next we move on to goal 8, which is recreational needs. And this is, in my opinion, the funniest goal of the whole bunch. If you pull up the actual wording in goal 8 on the statewide planning goal, it talks about providing for the recreational needs of our citizens and our visitors. And then it also talks about destination resorts. So the recreational needs part for our citizens and visitors gets 1 paragraph. And then the remaining 6 pages are literally dedicated to how you cite a destination resort in your community. At this point, we have not had, nor have we focused on the destination resort piece of this, just because it's not imminent. It hasn't been imminent. We've focused more on our recreational needs for our county and our visitors. We do have all of the policies currently in our goal 8 are based out of the county parks master plan, which we adopted in 2006. And we did take those existing policies back to the Recreational Lands Advisory Board earlier this year to get their input on it and the policies that they recommend to be updated or changed. I understand that it had been hoped that they would be applying for funding in the budget for this fiscal year for an update to their plan. I don't think that did occur. So we were hoping to piggyback on their work to update our goal 8, but we did get some good feedback from the committee at this point. My thought to think about, one thing that did come up with our discussions with the Rec Lands Advisory Board and also with the Planning Commission is this issue of changing patterns and who's moving into the county and why. And one of the things in particular that came up was the issue of climate change refugees. And a lot of these people, if this occurs, would possibly be coming to our area from more urbanized areas. How does that change the types of amenities and the park facilities that we need to be thinking about and building and providing for our future citizens? And to what extent can we accommodate that, given that we are a rural community and we don't really have a lot of paved parking lots and, you know, paved trails and things like that. So again, something to think about over the next 20 years, who is going to move into our county, who's going to be using our parks, and, you know, even our visitors may change their expectations. I know that 40 years ago, mountain biking wasn't a thing, and now we've got a really great trail over at Clutchie. So again, just future things to think about.
Thank you, Gail. I'll recognize Commissioner Thompson, then Commissioner Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So really that issue of people coming and looking for a place to park, we really see that in my neighborhood. It's an issue right now today. It isn't a future thing. So whatever you can do to put that in some kind of community discourse process, I think is going to be important. People have a right to come here. They have a right to have access to the beach. On the other hand, the people who own property here also have a right to enjoy it without being prevented from the access of public safety vehicles, for example. So that's one thing. And I'm trying to remember, sometime in the course of my Clatsop County service, I remember a couple of times hearing that someone was interested in creating a destination resort someplace along the Columbia, but I'm afraid I can't remember more than that. So I think perhaps that would happen again. So you're on it. I'm quiet.
Okay, Commissioner Webb.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the end of your remarks, Commissioner Thompson. What you said, okay, you got it. I don't know what.
So Commissioner Bangs apparently has more current information than I do, Commissioner Webb. I'm reading the screen.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, should we hear that first?
Sure, we'll go to Commissioner Bangs.
Yeah.
If I remember my local history, it was a Great Wolf Lodge right outside of Brownsmead between Brownsmead and Wanna off of the Columbia. That was about, oh goodness, I would say 2 decades ago at least. But that's just local folklore and conversation, so on and so forth. But I just wanted to, I guess, piggyback on what Commissioner Thompson was saying about parking. And every time we have fishing season, they're parked up and down Highway 30, and we've done our best to try to mitigate that. But people do have a right during that time of year to be able to have a safe environment with which to come to. And parking on the side of Highway 30 is probably not safe.
Thank you, Commissioner Bangs, and I can agree. It gets pretty crowded around Hammond, Warrenton area as well during the salmon season, the buoy 10 season. Commissioner Webb.
Yeah, one of the a couple of years ago, Travel Oregon funded a very robust survey among recreational that's not the right phrase, among tourism providers, the business side of it, and also tourism consumers in Oregon. And one of the things in the it was a wonderful survey that was very disaggregable at the county level. And one of the things that really surprised me and got my attention was that both tourists and tourism providers in the industry emphasized the fact that they thought there should be more rural recreational opportunities in the county. And that is something that our local tourism advisory group has kind of been wrestling with, in conjunction, incidentally, with the fact that in the last session, the ODF was given a nice pot of money for what they're calling REI, which I think stands for Recreational Environmental Investments. I can't, something like that. Anyway, now ODF actually has a program and staff that is working out of our local, not the county office, but the regional part of ODF, where they're talking about how to encourage and provide for recreation on state forest lands. And so I think there's a lot going on in this issue right now. And so I hope we'll be able to address some of these goal 8 issues around all that kind of activity that's going. And I hope my fellow commissioners, when I come to the board next year with budget requests, will maybe turn some attention to the fact that we need to be coordinating with the state and with our local tourism industry about what all this needs to look like, because I think it has very significant infrastructure implications. And so I think that, the parking issues that have been raised, all those things, how many trails are enough? When do we make them official? When do we put up signs? How do we provide for public access and parking, which is huge. So anyway, that's a little advertisement for the coming budget session.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Webb. Commissioner Toyoka.
Oh, thank you. I was just, reading through this earlier and then listening to Gail. It's the 2 things strike me. We're looking at, like she said, there's predominantly here about destination resort siting. We talk about recreational needs, but I think the more compelling statement was like more people from urbanized areas visit. Well, we have a lot of people from urbanized areas moving here because of the new work standards. Working from home, and that gives them more freedom to live wherever. I think the hazard here is that if we're planning and you're trying to say, let's make it more available, more comfortable for, urban visitors, more comfortable for destination resorts, I think you might change the character of the coast, to take it away from what it is, the natural beauty and the reason we all live here in the first place. One example, we used to live in a neighborhood and a lot of out-of-towners started moving in and they wanted to say, well, Portland, we do this, in Seattle, we do that. And they started changing things. finally people are moving out saying, well, you know, this just isn't the way it used to be. It's not as nice as it used to be here. Well, because they made it to where they left. So that's kind of a hazard here, is we're looking at, you know, destination resort siting or urbanization, from urban areas moving towards us. We still have to always keep an eye on the character and the nature of the coast and not stray from that. Thank you.
Agreed, Commissioner Toyoka. Certainly it's a balance, and we don't want to lose the character of our community. Any other comments, questions? Commissioner Webb?
I guess since I'm an old bear and remember when the state law first came into effect, that was the time when places like Salishan were being developed. And so I think there was a lot of resistance to that. And look what has happened, you know, along other places on the coast. So I'm kind of looking forward to addressing this issue about destination resorts. I think it's just from an historical standpoint, at the time that the goals were set, it was very controversial. It was a lot of discussion. And I hope we've seen the last of those developed on the coast, but maybe we can do something about that. You know, I mean, maybe we can address it now.
Thank you, Commissioner Webb. Commissioner Banks?
I completely agree with Commissioner Toyoka's perspective regarding, you know, what we pursue in this goal, and to be careful to tiptoe through the tulips to make sure that we still keep our coastal community what it is. I don't think we need destination type situations popping up in Brownsmead. So that's just a personal thought. Now, granted, this conversation was when I was like 12, so I don't know a whole lot about it. I just wanted to make sure that everyone kind of understood that I was basing my thought process off of what you absorb when you're age 12.
Thank you, Commissioner Bangs. The Great Wolf Lodge escaped me. I missed that one, so that was news to me.
And it could have been something else, but it was right off between Brownsmead and the Wanna Mill, right off on that little island out there. The name of it escapes me right now.
Interesting. Any other questions on Goal 8, recreational needs? You want to, Commissioner Thompson?
You know, I just don't want us to get loved to death. I really, when I look at what it feels like to be downtown in Cannon Beach trying to get my mail, because I can't get mail to my house, and rather than have it stuck off beside the highway someplace where somebody can break into it and steal it, I lease a post office box in Cannon Beach. And I'm telling you, there is more and more year-round visitation, and it's less and less the character of a town, and it's more and more the character of a theme park. Because I come from the Midwest, we had theme parks, and people just kind of walked all over, and they looked at their cell phones, not so much because we didn't have cell phones, but you know what I mean? They were distracted. They didn't have to take care of traffic. There was litter. I mean, my neighbors go out and clean up beside the highway because folks litter. So there are people who want to come and enjoy it, but there's a difference between using it and honoring it in the use, and using it and degrading it. And so to whatever extent we can look at our recreational needs so that we maintain the mental health of the people here, and we look at having people come here and honor the place rather than degrade it or destroy it. I don't know how you put that into words, but Gail, you're pretty good with this stuff. So if you can capture that, I'd be grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Any other discussion on this item? If not, we can move on.
Okay. So we are reaching the halfway point, not of my presentation, but of our 18 goals. And I know you're all relieved to hear that I'm not going to talk for another hour and a half. But Goal 9 is economic development. And our Goal 9 was developed many years ago before things that we take for granted right now were even thought about, at least in my head. Broadband, internet, social media, digital age, all these different things, electric vehicles, so many things have changed, and our Goal 9 is in desperate need of upgrading. And as part of our process, Julia Decker, our planning manager, she's been reaching out to the chambers and the Port Authority and other entities to get their thoughts. We reached out to the Fair Board to just get some thoughts about, what we see as economic development potential here over the next 20 years. And Goal 9 has some very specific requirements about what we need to look at and evaluate as we think about our economic development activities here. And that includes things like our labor market, how we are balancing material and energy costs, which right now is a increasingly important issue as we have supply chain issues and all sorts of different things arising because of the pandemic. We need to be able to think about what kind of facilities we have in place to support our economic development efforts. And I know that the board talked a lot about this during the North Coast Business Park discussion and what we're going to do with that property. And so this is just almost a continuation at a larger level of a lot of that discussion. A couple of things that I thought about as we look at our bigger picture items and talking about economic development. From the planning perspective, what I see happening in our department a lot is commercial growth, especially sort of heavier commercial, light industrial growth, is really taking off in the Miles Crossing Jeffers Gardens area, all of which is in a floodplain, part of which is in a tsunami inundation zone. And this is where we're seeing our growth. And this is where we're seeing, because of the types of businesses that are going out there, a lot of automotive repair, farm equipment repair, farm equipment material sales and things like that. There's going to be hazardous materials stored on those sites, which is part of the nature of their business. But again, it's in a floodplain and in an inundation zone. So one of the things that Goal 9 wants us to do is to take a look around, and we need to be identifying, inventorying, first of all, our commercial and industrial lands, and then thinking about where will we need this type of use in the future. And so I think one of our big questions we might want to think about is, what do we do with Jeffers Gardens, Miles Crossing? Because we have long established businesses there that are really in a hazard area. So we've got conflicts right now with Goal 7, our natural hazards area. We probably have some conflicts with our coastal estuarine resources because there are shorelands there that are identified as significant and require a 50-foot buffer. There's a lot of potential wetlands on many of the properties where they haven't been filled in over the years. So there's a lot going on in that area, both economically but environmentally as well. So that's one thing to think about. And then I think more importantly is what is the board's view on the county's role in economic development overall? I understand from our work sessions that we don't want to be seen as promoting one type of industry or product or anything like that over another and creating an unlevel playing field. But conversely, if you go on the county's website and type in economic development, the page comes up and my name's on it, but there's really no content or direction or program that's been established there. And so I think that's something that we really need to look at over the next 20 years is what is our role? And then how do we want to implement our role or play it out? So just, again, big picture things to think about. And I'll open up for questions there.
Yeah, thank you. It's good food for thought. Does anybody have any comments, questions?
Okay. Well, I see none. Chair, I'll throw this out to the board. We've come halfway through our goals right now. We've got about 10 minutes before the next meeting. I know that my voice would be happy to stop talking. I'm sure people's ears would be happy for my voice to stop talking. And if the board is in agreement, we could pick up the remaining 8 goals on October 27th at our next workshop or work session.
I think that would be a wise thing to do at a halfway point. Commissioner Webb?
Well, I was just going to request a little bit of an interim break between now and our next meeting. That's my dog behind me. That's her message that it's dinner time. And so
Okay.
I have to go.
Well, looks like she's got a 10-minute dinner break.
Yeah.
And we'll be here at 6 o'clock. Thank you very much, Gail. Appreciate this comprehensive walk through the goals. This is very helpful.
Good. Thank you very much for your extra time today. I really appreciate it.
And we'll get back together here in 10 minutes. Looks like we got most everybody back. Commissioner Thompson, we'll wait just a minute here. Okay, I think we got everybody. We can get ready to go here. We'll go ahead and record. Board of Commissioners. Okay, thank you. The Board of Commissioners, as the governing body of Clatsop County, all county service districts for which this body so acts, is now meeting in regular session. Clerk of the board, can we have the roll call, please?
Chair Quila,
Here.
Vice Chair Thompson,
I'm here.
Commissioner Toyoka,
Here?
Commissioner Webb,
Here.
Commissioner Banks,
Here.
Thank you, Teresa. So we've had a chance to review the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Commissioner Thompson moves to approve the agenda, Mr. Chair.
Second?
Move to second to approve the agenda. All those in favor signify with an aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. And we'll start off with our public health update, and I'll turn it over to our public health director, Margot Lalich.
Good evening, commissioners. Nice to see you again. Brief update. As we know, cases are going down, and that's very good news for all of us. I think we've been eagerly anticipating this. Sadly, though, we have had another death from COVID. So that brings our total number of deaths to 28. We are continuing to conduct testing 5 days a week. The demand is decreased. We've had a lot of cases of COVID and the Delta variant in the community, although immunizations or vaccinations continue to creep up, which is good news. And so we will continue testing indefinitely as long as there's a need, but we're going to decrease our testing by 1 hour a day, conducted in the mornings 9 to 12. And we are at our new location in Camp Rylea, and it's conducive to drive-through testing as well as vaccination in all weather. So it's very good news. And then we will be using the afternoon to conduct drive-through booster vaccinations for the Pfizer vaccine out at Camp Rylea, and we will start doing that 1 day a week in about another week. We're finalizing all of the dates. Our PIC continues to be busy with calls and it's well staffed. We've brought on another supervisor, so we have 2 supervisors for that operation, which is really important for redundancy and continuity of operations. So that's going very well. And they keep the public up to date and informed, very integral part of our ongoing response. Vaccinations, lots going on with boosters, who's going to get boosters, eligibility, what OHA is going to provide, when they're going to be authorizations. So a lot of information coming to us daily. What we're doing in preparation is maintaining our 4-day-a-week clinic here at the health department, as well as giving COVID. We're giving flu and our other vaccinations. Beginning in November, we will start hosting, assuming Moderna is approved, we will start having our Moderna booster clinic at the fairgrounds. That will be our typical 4 to 7 clinic that worked well with the community. Again, if you remember previously, we were the primary vaccine provider in the community. Now there's access throughout the community, so we're not anticipating as many people coming to those clinics. So we have that scheduled out through November, and I think we'll do it month by month. We're not publishing that information yet because we're finalizing the details. As I said, we'll have a Pfizer drive-through booster or additional dose, depending, or 3rd dose, I should say now, clinic out at Camp Rylea. We will plan to work with the schools if and when, I should say when the pediatric vaccines are approved. Again, we're making, I think, a very responsible choice in the community to isolate our different clinics and not give this different vaccines at the same clinic, because it eliminates any risk of medication errors, right? Drawing up the wrong vaccine, the wrong dosing, and we've done a really good job in our county running these operations in partnership with all of our healthcare partners. So we're going to continue with that. And then we're getting more questions about monoclonal antibody therapy. We are in the planning stages. We're about 60% to the to-go date for standing up a monoclonal antibody therapy, again, out at Camp Rylea. So again, we have this goal of centralizing our operations, and we're successfully doing so. We're working closely with both Providence Seaside Hospital and Columbia Memorial Hospital. They will be providing the clinical administration. Public health will play an administrative support role, as well as the PIC in assisting with scheduling individuals who meet the criteria and are eligible for the therapy. We did learn yesterday that the MRC can be deployed, the Medical Reserve Corps can be deployed to support this operation as well, although they will not be doing so in a clinical capacity. There are other communities doing this, and again, it will be first come, first serve, and we will be able to administer as many doses as we are allocated through OHA. So still quite a bit to work out in that, but we will have multiple operations taking place at one time. But I think we will be adequately addressing all the various needs in the community depending upon the population, where they are in their immunization trajectory, where they are in terms of accessibility, age, etc. So I think we're on track with our goals and objectives. With regard to the response, you know, I do know that we're all feeling a bit of just a little bit calmer, breathing a little bit easier. You know, our positivity rate now is about 5%. Cases, as I said, are going down. But what we also know is the unexpected can appear at any time with this pandemic, and we're just beginning to go into the winter months. So we're planning ahead, and I fully expect us to be prepared for what may come, and we certainly have the infrastructure and the working relationships in place. So happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Director Lalich. I just wanted to make one comment real quick. I don't think you can overstate how many different fronts the public health department has been working on here, whether it's schools, whether it's vaccines, whether it's testing, now monoclonal antibodies. And it has just been, you know, a great example of the partnerships that that public health has built with our hospitals, with the National Guard, with other partner agencies to make this all come together. I just marvel at how able to stand up a monoclonal antibody clinic in such a short period of time, and being close to having that happen. So I really appreciate your efforts, Fargo. Commissioner Banks.
Well, I have two questions, and one, I've had a lot of teaching colleagues reach out to me and out of concern because they were the first vaccinated of well, not the first, but you know what I mean. Concerned that they are reaching the end of their vaccine protections, and trying to find quality information to ease them going into basically flu season. And so I was just wondering, do you have any updates on the quality of the Moderna vaccine? How long is it lasting? Are our teachers, you know, able to feel comfortable and confident in remaining safe going through the flu season?
Right. So the most recent literature that's come my way, and I just got was updated today with some FAQs from OHA, but in my own research, you know, Moderna is still, and I had Moderna vaccine as well, is that there's a debate about how urgent we need to be about getting the booster dose for the Moderna, that we still do have an immunity. The extent of the ability to measure that immunity is, you know, a little bit precarious, I would say is an appropriate word at this point in time. But, you know, I think that what will happen is the approval for the Moderna vaccine will likely somewhat mirror what we're seeing with the Pfizer vaccine. So I feel comfortable. I still feel like I'm protected at this point in time. And again, it's not just the vaccine. Masking plays an incredibly important barrier method. Exactly. So even though we're vaccinated, we still want to be wearing those masks. And you know, I think we don't know what we're going to see with flu season this year. I think we'll probably see more cases, but certainly less than we would prior to the pandemic. Having people wear masks is going to help a lot with the spread of flu. But again, you know, we do recommend, I got my flu shot a little over a week ago. I think we're going, last winter was different than this winter, we have to remember, right? And so I think we're going to learn quite a bit going forward.
Commissioner
Thank
Baines.
you very much. Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry, I just had a second, a follow-up, well, and a little tongue-in-cheek statement. So I had somebody make a comment about why I'm always wearing a mask on a Zoom meeting. And just for those of you who are curious, I'm still at work and I'm still around children and they are still within vicinity of me. And so I'm not crazy lunatic sitting by myself wearing a mask. Anyhow, just putting that out there. But my second comment or question is so even in my own field in schools, what do you suggest parents to do, especially when, say, a child gets a snuffy nose? It's a common childhood cold appearance. Do they immediately rush in and go get that child a test? Like, I guess there's just parents are just confused. I think that that's the best way to describe it, is parents are just confused. When do they keep their child at home? When do they worry? When do they get that test? When can they send them back to school? I was hoping for some clarity.
So I won't go into details on that in the board meeting because I know you have a full agenda. What I will tell you is that's really helpful feedback, because we do get calls at the pick from parents. We are providing all the most up-to-date information, and the schools are doing a very good job. What I will say is that if a child is symptomatic, right, and there's a concern that they may have COVID, right, and it could be a runny nose, right? We're learning a lot from kids. The schools can test them. All of our schools are doing diagnostic testing. And in fact, we had our weekly meeting with superintendents and school nurses today, and we had 5 people on that call from OHA who are part of the testing team. Again, to make sure that there's a consistent understanding and a shared understanding about how to implement testing protocols in the school setting. It's very confusing. That was some of our feedback for OHA, because what we're telling the public about rapid tests doesn't completely apply under the same circumstances in the school setting of how rapid tests are being used. And so it's confusing everyone, unfortunately. So I think they're going to work on it. But there's 2 conditions under which they can conduct testing. It's cohort testing in the school setting, and then it's also if a child is symptomatic. Again, a runny nose can be a number of different things, right? But when you have a runny nose and a sore throat or a fever or a headache or any type of lethargy, the child should be sent home. And it's not just because we're concerned about COVID. It meets the criteria for exclusion from school under the communicable disease guidelines for schools. So that's just good feedback, and we'll keep at it.
I hate to go one more time, but if we could potentially reach, I know we have the 5 superintendents on those calls, but we do have some private schools within our community. We do have childcare facilities within our community. If we could create something very similar to your superintendent phone call, but open communications to our other regional facilities, child care facilities, then hopefully this message can get out easier for, because working in childcare, every day is a panic if there's a runny nose. So if we can kind of get all of our directors and superintendents, that would be awesome. So I know it's one more thing, and I'm sorry.
No. That's really good feedback, because this meeting was set up before I came on board. It's been a really robust standing meeting. And so may have been that those invitations were extended to the full group, and there's attrition over time. And so I can follow up on that. But what I will say is, we get a lot of calls every day in the PIC, and we're not getting calls from child care settings at this point, or from really the independent or charter schools. If they have a concern or issue, believe me, they do call us, and we're available 24/7. We're not getting a whole lot of calls. So that, that's also good information for me in terms of the fact that I think they have what they need in the early learning divisions, a little bit different, but I'll follow up and see who was on that original invite list.
Good questions, Commissioner Bangs. As someone else with small children, I can relate. Any other questions? Not seeing any. We'll go. Thank you very much, Margot, for the date. Thank you for all you're doing. We'll move on to our next item. We have 3 proclamations on the agenda. So the first is the Domestic Violence Awareness Month proclamation on page 154. And I see that, is it Jenny Feldman, are you going to be presenting on this? Okay, I'll turn it over to you.
I wasn't planning to read the proclamation. I don't have it in front of me, unfortunately. Hopefully,
I can go ahead and read it.
Okay, awesome. And I can just talk a little bit about the harbor services for just like 3 seconds after, if that's cool. Thank you.
Okay, and Jenny, do you want to do that right now? And then I could go ahead and read the proclamation. We'll take a vote.
Sure.
Proclamation after. Okay.
Sure, that makes sense. Hi, I'm Jenny Feldman. I am the LGBTQ+ outreach coordinator at the Harbor. If you don't know about us, I know a lot of people know we exist, but they don't really know what we do. We're Clatsop County's certified advocacy agency for survivors of domestic violence, but also sexual assault and stalking. So we provide advocacy, prevention, and support while promoting self-determination and hope for survivors. But we have a number of services besides emergency shelter. We help write protective orders for clients. We go to hospitals and courts with our clients. So if somebody has been sexually assaulted, we can show up at the hospital and sit with them while they have to get a forensic exam. We have a 24-hour crisis line. We work with law enforcement and the hospitals, obviously. And we also do prevention, which is a lot of what I do, which is really exciting. We go into schools and we talk with youth about like how to avoid domestic violence in the first place, how to communicate in a healthy way, how to have good, positive, open communication in their future relationships. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jenny. I appreciate you describing some of the work that you're doing, and we appreciate what the Harbor does in our community. We have a resolution in order in front of us. Would anybody like to make a motion in support of this?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Thompson moves to approve the resolution and order proclaiming October 2021 to be Domestic Violence Awareness Month and authorize the chair to read, then sign the proclamation.
I second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the resolution and order proclaiming October 2021 to be Domestic Violence Awareness Month and authorize the chair to read, then sign the proclamation. All those in favor signify with an aye.
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 All those opposed? Okay, I'll go ahead and read the proclamation. Whereas the first Domestic Violence Month was observed in October 1987, the same year that saw the initiation of the first National Domestic Violence Toll-Free Hotline, and in 1989, Congress designated October as National Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And whereas domestic violence is a pattern of assaultive and coercive behaviors, including physical, psychological, sexual, and economic abuse, social isolation, and stalking that are used to maintain power and control over a person's intimate partner. And whereas the crime of domestic violence violates an individual's dignity, safety, and basic human rights, and whereas domestic violence is the single largest cause of injury and homicide for women, and whereas children exposed to domestic violence experience terror, isolation, guilt, helplessness, and grief, and have a higher risk of engaging in criminal behavior and substance abuse and becoming victims of crime, and whereas domestic violence is the largest single cause of injury and homicide for women, and whereas domestic violence impacts the health and well-being of our community, and whereas it is incumbent on every citizen to play a role in preventing and ending domestic violence, now therefore be it hereby resolved that the Board of County Commissioners of Clatsop County does hereby proclaim October 2021 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in Clatsop County, and we encourage all members of the community to join in this observance, dated this 13th day of October by Mark Quila, Board Chair of the Clatsop County Commissioners. Thank you very much, Jenny.
Thank you all for your support. We appreciate you so much.
We'll move on to our next proclamation, which is the Indigenous Peoples Day Proclamation on page 157 of our agenda. And Amanda, are you going to be presenting on this?
Yeah, so
nobody.
Oh, sorry. Did you have anything else to?
No, sorry,
okay.
Just turning over to you.
All right. So Indigenous Peoples Day is celebrated on the second Monday of October, on October 11th this year, to honor the beautiful traditions and cultures of Indigenous people, not just in America, but around the world. In total, 14 U.S. states, including Oregon, the District of Columbia, and more than 130 cities now celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day alongside or in place of Columbus Day. And also, so after receiving some additional feedback from local community members, I want to take a moment to acknowledge that the following proclamation highlights the experience and stories of Chinook Indian Nation. And as my work includes assisting with the writing of county proclamations, it's my hope to educate myself on the experience and stories of the Clatsop Nehelm Confederated Tribes, so that in the coming years, all local Indigenous peoples are better represented in county proclamations as we seek to recognize and celebrate the enduring traditions, languages, governments, and histories of Indigenous people.
Thank you very much, Amanda. And we have a resolution and order. Commissioner Toyoka?
Just a question, comment. It's like, you know, the one thing I questioned was, it says you want to celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day alongside or in place of. Is that like canceling Columbus Day to replace it with another celebration, or why cannot the verbiage be celebrate Indigenous People Day alongside Columbus Day? I mean, I don't think we should cancel one part of history to celebrate another.
Yeah, Chair Coelho, members of the board, I'll respond to that. I think what some communities have kind of stepped aside from the Columbus Day celebration and are focusing on the Indigenous Peoples Day. And so I think that what staff was just trying to capture is just what some other communities have, but we certainly are celebrating both. Columbus Day is still a federal holiday for many. And so we recognize both. I think it was just more of a summary of how it's been addressed in many of these communities.
I would like to propose just change that verbiage to get rid of the, remove the or in place of.
And I'm just reading over the resolution. I don't think it says in place of.
It says People's Day alongside or in place of Columbus Day.
Yeah, if I can speak to that, if that's okay, Commissioner. So this is just the informational summary to explain what Indigenous Peoples Day is. And so it's just acknowledging that in some communities it's alongside, and in some communities it's in place of, but it's not speaking for Clatsop County in terms of one or the other. And then the proclamation doesn't state that.
Yeah, the proclamation doesn't have that in it.
Okay, I just wanted to make, I read that, I didn't see it there, but I just wanted to make sure that wasn't our intent in any way. Seems minor, but it's like we make that distinction now. What's next?
Yeah.
Oh, we can't say Christmas anymore. We have to say something else. We're canceling that. So I just wanted to make sure in our verbiage we're consistent.
Thank you, Commissioner Toyoka, and thank you for an opportunity to clarify.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the resolution and order proclaiming the second Monday of October, October 11th, 2021, to be Indigenous Peoples Day, and authorize the chair to read, then sign the proclamation.
I second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the resolution and order proclaiming the second Monday of October, October 11th, 2021, to be Indigenous Peoples Day, and authorize the chair to read, then sign the proclamation. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. I'll read the proclamation. Whereas Indigenous Peoples Day celebrates the enduring traditions, languages, governments, and histories of Indigenous people, and whereas historical and contemporary contributions and innovations of Indigenous people to the arts, education, health, economic development, environmental stewardship, and civic community make Clatsop County in Oregon a better place to live and work. And whereas Indigenous people have called Oregon home since time immemorial, and whereas we acknowledge that we reside on the traditional and unceded homelands of the Chinook Indian Nation, the sovereign nation of the 5 westernmost Chinookan-speaking tribes, the Clatsop and Clathlamit, and present day Oregon, and the Lower Chinook, Wahkiakum, and Willapa of what is now Washington State. And whereas it is also important for us to never forget the history of violence, forced migration, theft of lands and resources, broken treaties, relocation, and other assimilative policies. And whereas seeking true allyship, we commit to uplifting the voices, experiences, and histories of the Indigenous people of this land and beyond. And whereas Clatsop County opposes systemic racism and exclusion of Indigenous people by supporting laws, policies, and practices that uphold tribal rights, ensure participation in community affairs, and create educational and economic opportunities. And whereas on the 23rd of June, 2021, the Clatsop County Board of Commissioners passed a resolution in order proclaiming support for tribal recognition for the Chinook Indian Nation. And now therefore be it hereby resolved that the Board of County Commissioners of Clatsop County does hereby proclaim the second Monday in October, October 11th, 2021, in Clatsop County, Indigenous Peoples Day in Clatsop County. We invite the county to learn about the Chinook peoples. In honor of Indigenous Peoples Day, we encourage community members to write letters of support, recognize the Chinook Indian Nation's legacy and rich history, dated this 13th day of October 2021, signed Board of County Commissioners, Marquila Board Chair. Thank you very much, Amanda. Next item is a proclamation for the Great Shakeout Day, and Tiffany Brown is here, our emergency manager. I'll turn it over to you.
Good evening, commissioners. I'm here to talk about the Great Shakeout Day, which is a worldwide earthquake drill. We invite everyone in Clatsop County to participate in this earthquake drill at the very basic level to drop, cover, and hold. Because of the Cascadia subduction zone threat, we really encourage people to stay down for 4 or 5 minutes to really understand what that anticipated threat is going to feel like. It feels like a lot longer than I think people imagine. We have about 3,900 people in our county registered this year. I just checked tonight before the board meeting. That's steadily increased over the years. And in Clatsop County, we advertise for the citizens, but we really, like many organizations, use it as an employee drill to test the Clatsop alert system, evacuation, and just to encourage employees to look around their workspaces and get their families prepared. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany. And we have a proclamation included in the packet. Do we have a motion?
So, Mr. Chair, I would move that we approve the resolution and order proclaiming October 21 to be Great Shakeout Day and authorize the chair to read, then sign the proclamation.
Second. And then can I ask you something really
It's been
fast?
moved and
Ms. Brown?
seconded. Just one second. Moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Commissioner Banks.
Sorry, a little impatient tonight.
No worries.
So is that going to be going over our cell phone alert system to those who have been signed up on our Clatsop County site?
Commissioner Bangs, we do not send an alert for the shakeout to the community. As you might expect, it's a really popular use of the Everbridge system. And so we keep it small with about 250 employees and reserve the community-wide alerts for different dates.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
And thank you, Commissioner Banks. Good question, good clarification. It's been moved and seconded to approve the resolution order. All those in favor signify with an aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. I'll go ahead and read the resolution. Whereas the proximity of Clatsop County's coastline to the offshore Cascadia subduction zone makes us vulnerable to local earthquakes and tsunamis, and whereas Clatsop County has no greater responsibility than ensuring the safety of its citizens and all of those who visit our county, and whereas Clatsop County Emergency Management partners with federal, state, local, tribal, territorial, private, and volunteer agencies to educate individuals on local hazards, how to prepare for them, and whereas earthquake safety is a serious concern with our entire county as risk to seismic shaking and tsunamis hazards, and whereas the best way to survive a natural disaster is to develop a preparedness plan for one's home, school, business, and family, and whereas being self-sufficient for at least 2 weeks after a natural disaster, as well as knowledge about what to do when disasters occur, is vital, all citizens, businesses, and governmental agencies are encouraged to participate in earthquake drills where they practice drop, cover, and hold on Great Shakeout Day. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Clatsop County Board of Commissioners hereby proclaims October 21st, 2021 to be Great Shakeout Day in Clatsop County, and encourage all citizens to join in this observance by increasing their earthquake resilience and working toward creating a more prepared society. Dated this 13th day of October 21, the Clatsop County Board of Commissioners, Mark Wheeler, Board Chair. Thank you very much, Tiffany. We'll move on to the next item, which is the business from the public. So this is an opportunity for anyone to give a 2-minute presentation about any item on the agenda, except public hearings, or any topic of county concern that is not on the agenda. Clerk of the board, are there any members of the public who have registered to speak?
Yes.
If you've registered to speak, please wait until your name is called, then give your name and address for the record, and you'll have 2 minutes to speak. Teresa, who is up first?
Cheryl Johnson.
Okay, Cheryl.
Cheryl Johnson, 44183 Peterson Lane, Astoria. I am a volunteer on the Citizen Advisory Committee for helping the county to update the comprehensive land use plan in the Northeast section. I am also the rep from the Northeast CAC to the countywide CAC. And the county commissioners have been putting in lots of time and energy reviewing the update work that the CACs have been doing. And a topic that has come up is that the county commissioners are very interested in expanding the public participation in this process. which is an excellent and outstanding goal. There is, on the other side of this, also some concerning comments that have come from the county commissioners in response to this process. On October 6th, the county commissioners had a work session and were specifically reviewing goals 1 through 4. One of the county commissioners was talking about the CACs and said that the CACs felt that they were, quote, entitled to be in the driver's seat. Entitled. I have been working on this for 2 years as a volunteer. There are between 30 and 40 volunteers all across the county in 6 different districts. In my view, this statement was not only incorrect, but it was also rude and disrespectful. That same commissioner in the same meeting was talking about the work of the CACs and stated that she felt that the work of the CACs had weaponized the process. Weaponized. I find these comments like this coming from county commissioners to be insulting to the public process, and I feel that it does nothing to encourage additional participation from the community. I would request that even though we have differences in views, that we continue to be respectful of each other during this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson.
Pat Corcoran.
Pat Corcoran.
Good evening, commissioners. My name is Patrick Corcoran. I reside at 472 Pleasant Avenue in Astoria, and I'm a member of the Citizen Advisory Committee also. I'd like to address the subject of engaging the public in land use planning. My fundamental interest is for Clatsop County to maintain a system for broad and effective public engagement throughout the county and in all phases of the planning process. And I think the Planning Commission does a pretty good job generally, but of course more can be done. My position with regard to the Citizen Advisory Committees is to maintain the committee structure based on the current subplan areas while recruiting more voices to the committees and ensuring adequate support for staff guidance. Engaging remote rural residents in land use planning is a perennial challenge, and staff did work on this in this case. Broadband updates and remote meetings will help, but more recruitment of rural members especially is needed. And kudos to the CAC members from remote areas participating in this plan update. The public needs to be involved in all parts of the planning process, and the methods need to change with the tasks. There's a big difference between accepting public input and developing a public document. The participants in the latter need to commit to regular meetings, do their homework, propose draft language, etc. This cannot be done entirely in a town hall format. The current CAC structure allows for working meetings over time with staff guidance. Finally, I don't support the idea to change the planning some areas to be coterminous with the commissioner district political boundaries. Currently, the sub-areas are defined by geographic and cultural boundaries that are relevant to land use planning decisions. These have been Clatsop County's sub-areas for planning since the late 1970s. As you know, the commissioner district boundaries are based largely on population and subject to change every 10 years. I don't see how these political boundaries will be better for land use planning purposes than the existing boundaries. And I wonder if we had the political district boundaries now, would our sub areas have changed midway through our current comp plan update? So this change just seems unnecessary to me. That's all. Thank you for your time this evening and for the many volunteer hours that you spend in service to Clatsop County.
Thank you, Mr. Cochran, and thank you very much to both of you for your efforts on the Citizens Advisory Committee. Appreciate.
That's all I have for public comment.
Okay. We'll go ahead and move on then to the next item, which is the consent calendar. We've all had an opportunity. Oh, County Manager, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Coyle. I just wanted to let the board know that there was an amendment to the consent item. There was an item 10 that was included, and I just wanted to mention that before the board took on the consent item. Thank you.
Thank you, County Manager. Has the board had an opportunity to review the consent calendar, including item 10? Okay. Do we have a motion? Oh, Commissioner Banks, do you have a question?
I do. I'm looking at the packet calendar that I was sent in the mail, and so I'm just curious what item 10 is.
Yes, that was emailed out because it didn't make it to the packet. It is a contract for purchase and installation of 2 Honda Marine engines and resolution for transfer of appropriations. And if you have any
Thank you.
questions, under Sheriff Williams is on the line also.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Okay, any questions or any more discussion? If not, do we have a motion?
So, Mr. Chair, I would move adoption of the amended consent calendar.
Second.
Moved and seconded to move for adoption of the amended consent calendar. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Now we'll move on to the commissioner liaison reports. We'll start with Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, sir. Let me grab my papers. Well, as our public health director mentioned, we are easing back in, some of us, to in-person. I went to Salem on Monday to participate in the Association of Oregon Counties, masked. I'm telling you, masked. It's so different to be in the room with people. Good meeting. I would call out to your attention, if you're interested in listening, the Natural Resources Committee. Senator Wyden has a bill, the Rivers of Democracy bill, and there was consternation among some of the frontier commissioners. And the question is, how do the committee members deal with those concerns? There was an open, respectful civil dialogue that presented all sides of the issue. And ultimately, because there were differences of opinion, the committee did not make a recommendation to the legislative committee, so that we aired our concerns, we discussed them. Senator Wyden's staffer, Malcolm McCreary, was there. And so it was a good exercise in discourse. And that's always extremely helpful. Governance and Revenue Steering Committee met. And by the way, these, Commissioner Webb, you had asked about how to find out what folks are up to. I'm not quite sure how to carry forward with getting the agendas shared, because who needs more emails in their inbox? But AOC, you know what I mean? AOC does absolutely, I know, absolutely have these agenda items. So I think as we deal with public information going forward, it might be useful to have commissioners' calendars and liaisons put someplace. I know, Commissioner, I'm sorry, County Manager Boone, the last thing you need is more things to do. But if we had those put up someplace, people could access the agendas, and if they were interested, see what the committees were up to. Most of the meetings are recorded. I'm just looking for how we go forward in our maturation as a governing body, because more and more of us are involved in more and more meetings representing Clatsop County to the best we know how. How do we inform each other? We can't keep going to more and more and more meetings. So I hope that we wrestle with that as we look at strategic planning and governance in particular. How do we share information about our liaisons so that people in Clatsop County have the best result from our public service? So AOC, we had interviews for the area manager for ODOT yesterday, and Clatsop County had a seat at that table. The committee made recommendations, and so we'll see what happens, because it's an ODOT process, but we're at the table. We are seen as being part of the governance team, and I think all of that is useful as we look to collaborate with ODOT, because we know how much we depend on them. Then today there was a meeting of the ACT chairs, and ACT stands for the Area Committees on Transportation, because what's happening, it's interesting, we have advisory bodies who serve at our pleasure, and we're negotiating and trying to clarify our relationship with them. And I apologize to anyone that I've offended, because I don't mean to give offense, but I want to talk about the difficult issues that are associated when we engage in conversations together. And Commissioner Webb, that reference that I made earlier to the comment, it's on page 87 and 88 of last week's agenda. And again, I'm simply dealing with data. I'm not here to be rude or unpleasant. It's a fact. I characterized it as having turned into a weaponized process. There's no intent to be insulting. Rather, my commitment is to talk about where I think we've got work to do to refine and improve what we do and how we do it, so we have the best possible result. So I hope that soothes feelings. If it doesn't, anyone is free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to continue the conversation. That's my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. I appreciate your comment. I think this is the place for open discussion of issues of importance, and it also can be done in a respectful manner. And I think that that's the way that we do things. So thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Commissioner Webb, you have your hand up.
I have a question. Commissioner Thompson, you said that that it was the area ODOT director. What's the geographic area of the area? Sorry.
Let's talk about this offline, because I bet you've got a lot of questions and I'm eager to talk with you about them.
No, I just wondered what the area was. That's all. Is it Clatsop County or is it multiple?
Oh, no. It's multiple counties. It's multiple counties. That's why there were representatives there. That's interesting. From, I don't know, Columbia, Clatsop, and Tillamook counties, and Western Washington County. So it's all of 3 and part of a 4th.
Thank you for that clarification, Commissioner Thompson. Commissioner Banks.
So I was busy last week. There were some contract negotiations and executive session with Northwest Senior and Disability Services. That seems to be taking up about a weekly space in my week, or at least an hour a week, just discussing contract negotiations. It happens. I attended a CFEDC meeting with our forestry products folks here in our community, and it was just kind of enjoyable. We've planned an actual in-person meeting with each other, and I think that that'll be great, since I actually haven't met most of these folks in person, just on the computer screen. And so I'm really looking forward to some relationship building. I attended the FT-LAC meeting. I expressed some discontent with ODF in their survey process, because they were basing a conversation off of a response or a survey of 52 people in the state of Oregon. And I felt that the survey could be more robust, and I encouraged them to reach out to the trust land counties in order to get a more robust discussion or a more robust response to that survey, versus just having the response be populated from their email inbox. I had a great support from Commissioner Thompson at that meeting, who was able to provide some wonderful, very eloquent insight into the conversations. Happy news for me out in Napa. I have Starlink finally. Yay! For some of you that you might not know what Starlink is, but thank you, Elon Musk. I actually have internet service and I can watch a movie at the same time. It's great. So just a perk yay for rural communities and being able to have Starlink. Hopefully I won't freeze in the future. And then in regards to the CFEDC, they have requested, since we will not be having a fall tour as local representatives of our community, that they are seeking to be able to have a short, brief informational for us at a future work session, which I've already discussed with County Manager. And I look forward to being able to see their presentation of the things that they are kind of things that impact our community. And then just a quick, I wanted to address something. It was mentioned at one of our last meetings that there was essentially no monies that stayed in the county from cutting trees. And I am not sure how many of I'm not sure, but I was bombarded with emails shortly thereafter those statements. And I don't know if anybody else was, but I did truly appreciate everybody sending me quantitative data so that I could make informed decisions. And quite honestly, this particular topic is one that bombardment of data should not have been necessary. If you are in any type of leadership role in this county, it has been made crystal clear to all of us during the budget cycle that timber provides a critical funding source for our county. And I just wanted to address a quick number and remind us all that 19.6 million this last year from our state timber harvest alone. That doesn't include secondary or tertiary revenues related to timber harvest. These aren't new numbers. These numbers are presented to us at every opportunity when we discuss our budget. At this stage, to ignore those really feels like we're willing to throw critical county programs under the bus. So I just want to reiterate that as representatives of our community, that when we have discussions, that they are quantitative discussions and not qualitative discussions. That we are focused on fact and numbers and data in front of us, and that we try to keep personal opinion out of the discussion. So thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you, Commissioner Bangs. We'll move to Commissioner Webb.
Yes, first I would like to apologize for my comment. It came out of my mouth completely wrong. I am well aware of the important component of our county economic system that the timber industry provides. As I say, the sentence just simply came out wrong, and I apologize to anybody who was offended. Okay, for my report, I think I've mentioned before that our 5-county consortium for workforce development, the Northwest Oregon Works program, has continued to receive additional funding. I assume it actually, I think, originated with CARES and will spill over into some ARPA money. And so they're really in good shape, and they're rather, most of what Oregon Works funds are the employment centers that are located. I think there are now 5 of them in our region. The one in Clatsop County is here in Astoria in the state office building. They are, the good news is that they're kind of taking a different look. They're accustomed to people who come in and look for jobs. That's their service population. But they've expanded and are doing much more counseling on continuing education and local resources and online resources in some of the state facilities and our community colleges that are doing workforce development, which is something that I've been hoping for a long time, since our unemployment rate has been so low. And actually, it didn't happen during the pandemic. I think this has been kind of an interesting thing to watch, because when all of the employment variations happened during the pandemic, and of course some of it was impacted by, you know, additional unemployment money, et cetera. It appears from the data that we really are seeing a number of people who are choosing not to go back into the workforce. And the consensus seems to be that that is driven by several factors, all of which we don't understand right now, but the childcare is definitely one of them. So, you know, that's just something we have got to come to grips with. Okay, that's I could go on and on about the workforce stuff, but that's it. OSU, our local Sea Grant office, is partnering for a very exciting grant that will provide training in all of our local training places to do training in the fisheries industry. And this is a pretty exciting thing, because I think that particularly if Clatsop Community College could be a part of this, we already have our maritime program there. This is just another way to beef up our local workforce training issues. And so I think it's pretty exciting. Everybody is invited to the October 23rd Arts Summit, which will happen online. They had hoped to be in person. The Arts Summit is one of the ways that local art people in the arts who make their living in the arts can both what's the right word, hang out with each other, but there's a great emphasis on the business of making a living out of arts. The public program that was held a couple of years ago was just marvelous, and this online program is going to be exactly the same way. The desire is, let's help people practice and make money and live off of their artistic abilities. So it's always a wonderful event. And of course it's online, and I hope it's on our website. I'm sure it is, but I'll bet Teresa knows. But anyway, I'm sure it's on our website. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Webb. Thank you for that full, comprehensive report of all your lots going on. And I'll turn it over to Commissioner Toyo.
Oh, good evening, everyone. I know we've been talking about comprehensive plans and a lot of planning things, but I'm still stuck on resiliency. I'm still talking to a lot of local agencies. I think as we go through the process about resiliency, I think that there's a great opportunity to connect with our local cities, all of our first responders, and make this a coordinated effort as we come up with things like EOC and just basic communications, during disaster and policies, a well-coordinated effort and a well-funded effort. Because if we can cross boundaries, county can utilize local city services, city can use county. I think the funding would be better for the taxpayers, so we can get more bang for the buck. And I think the end result would be better as a coordinated effort between all the coastal communities and the county as the coordinator. So just working towards that, and as I get more headway, I will report more back to the board. Secondly, thank you to staff and fellow commissioners, and especially the public. I just got my notice. I graduated and have a graduation ceremony from AOC County College. It's coming up. So I just got that in the email. So that's fun. But the biggest thing I can tell you about the AOC, the county college, is that while the classes and the topics themselves were, they may not have been pertinent to Clatsop County, but it made you think, how does this apply here? And then with the staff, talking to Dawn or the county manager or Monica, you get the answers of how it applies to county. And then it really gives you an in-depth feel of, not only how the county works, but how we interact and, how the different agencies can support this county. So it was a great experience, and, it's over. No, I'm kidding. Lastly, I just want to report, I've been honored Friday. I'm going to be on a officer selection board in Warrenton Police Department. Chief Workman invited me to sit on a panel to go through the interview process for prospective officers. And especially in this time and day and time, I am so thankful that there are people who, men and women, step up and want to protect and serve this public. I am thankful for that many applications in a small town, and is just thankful for all those who do serve. So that's it for me today.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Toyoga. Couldn't agree with you more. I'm glad that, thank you for doing that for the city of Warrenton. I just wanted to follow up on a discussion we had a little while ago when we had the sheriff here talking about rural law enforcement and rural fire departments and volunteers. After that discussion, we did have a meeting with the chairs of the county with the governor and relayed some of these same concerns. It wasn't just Clatsop County, but it's Coos County. It's a lot of Eastern Oregon counties. It's Lane County that are also concerned about losing large numbers from their volunteer fire departments and from their medics and from other organizations. So we convened a smaller group and met with trying to think of her name from the governor's office, Leah Horner, and relayed these same concerns. I know that the governor's weighing these issues, and I appreciate her effort to at least have that smaller group discussion and listen to some of these counties that are facing these same issues. And we have yet to hear anything back, but I'll continue to keep you guys abreast as we continue to meet. But yeah, it's certainly a concern, not just in Clatsop County, but across the board. And I don't have anything else, so I'll go ahead and move on to the public hearing this evening. Actually, no.
The county manager's report.
County manager, oh, I did that again. Gosh darn it. Sorry, Don. Go ahead.
Chair Quayle, members of the board, I was thinking I might slide through this, but you didn't let that happen. So just a couple things. I'll be brief. As part of the work sessions, if it is okay with your board, I'd like to add 10 minutes to every work session to allow me and you to have a conversation about some things that are just inevitably coming up, such as letters of support, such as it could be legislative issues. We just don't really have a forum for us just to talk about some things that are going on. And so if it's okay, we'll just add 10 minutes to that. The public health updates will be fewer, just given where we are with the pandemic. So I'll backfill that time with some conversations. I think it'll be easier instead of just always sending emails and things, just to have a conversation. So that's one thing. The other is that we are kicking off efforts to do a strategic facilities plan, which is really a space plan for the county, looking at the county's needs over the next 10 to 20 years and the conditions of our existing facilities, and figure out what the options are as we move forward. Part of the what's in play is the old jail. Trying to figure out what might be the next iteration of that use. So we'll keep your board involved and updated as we go through that process. The other is just a reminder that the strategic plan survey is out there. It's being shared widely with staff, all board and commission members, as well as other community partners. And so as you have time, and feel free to give me a call if you have any questions or if you want to talk through any potential issues or priorities. I'm always available. So that's all I have today, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, County Manager. I see Commissioner Banks has a question.
Are you adding time to the front side or the back side of our work sessions?
It's just going to be the front. So the work sessions will be the same length.
Oh, thank you. I just was clarifying.
Yeah, it'll be the same length. We'll just add 10 minutes, not add. We'll just consume 10 minutes for us to talk. So
I'm very not adding a third hour to our work sessions.
I haven't said that really what staff would like is to have a work session daily, but I figure that's not in the works. So. So.
No. No, please. Okay, we'll move on. At this time, we'll move on to the public hearing. We have ordinance number 21-04, Law Duck Article 4 amendments, and this is the second reading. It's on page 216 of our agenda. And I'll turn it over to our Community Development Director, Gail Henriksen.
Good evening, Commissioners. Again, for the record, Gail Henriksen, Community Development Director. For the next hour and a half, I want to talk about Goal 4. Oh, wait, no, sorry, wrong goal. Actually, I have no updates from our last staff report at our last regular meeting. The revisions are to correct interpretation and miscommunication errors that occurred when we consolidated our two codes. The Planning Commission has recommended approval of these revisions, and the board conducted its first reading 2 weeks ago at its regular meeting. We are recommending approval, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Gail. Any questions for staff? If not, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing at this time. Clerk of the board, are there any members of the public who have registered to speak?
No, there are not.
Okay, if there's no testimony, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And any further discussion? If there is none, we'll need a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that the board adopt ordinance 21-04, revisions to Article 4, LAWDUC, and conduct the second reading of the ordinance by title only.
Second that motion.
Okay, it's moved and seconded that the board adopt ordinance 21-04, revisions to Article 4, and conduct the second reading of the ordinance by title only. All those in favor signify with an aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. And County Council, can we have the second reading by short title only?
An ordinance amending Article 4 of the Clatsop County Land and Water Development and Use Code.
Thank you very much, County Council. And we'll move on in our agenda. The business agenda: approve participation in the Columbia Pacific Economic Development District, COLPAC, Regional Broadband Initiative. That's on page 681 of our packet. And I saw that Arian Colombo is here from COLPAC, and I'll turn it over to our county manager.
Thank you, Chair Quayla, members of the board. COLPAC has been coordinating a regional broadband planning project that really looks at the planning and design of a redundant regional middle mile dark fiber. And so as part of this, there are 4 counties that are part of the initiative, and that's Clatsop County, Columbia County, Tillamook, and then Washington County, which is really Western Washington County. And so in order to have a consultant help COLPAC work through this process, each of the counties has agreed to contribute $25,000 to the effort. And so what staff is recommending is that the county participate and that we use part of our ARPA funding, which was set aside for infrastructure and specifically broadband for this effort. But as Chair Quayla mentioned, Arian's on the phone, and so she's available to answer any questions that the board might have as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Webb.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. One of them, excuse me, one of them is, are we anticipating that this is going to be done by consultants? We're going to be RFPing each or combinations of this task? Anybody answer my question?
Colombo's here. She can answer this question.
Oh, would you like me to answer that question? Sorry. Okay, great.
Yeah, yes. Whoever.
Commissioner Webb, yes, we have contracted with consultants to do the majority of the work, and then COPAC will be complementing their efforts with staff time.
Can so you've already selected the consultant? Who is it?
Yes, Uptown Services.
Okay. And are they sort of broadband planning experts? Is that, or where are they located?
I believe they operate out of Colorado, and they do broadband planning projects throughout the country.
Oh, okay.
They, in Oregon, they've done a similar project in Clackamas County, Hillsborough, and I think they may have one other Oregon client.
On the Oregon, I'm sorry.
I think they may have one other Oregon client, but they worked in Washington County, Hillsborough, and Clackamas County.
Okay, great. And what is the timeline? When do we expect a product of some sort out of this?
So we already have a preliminary network map, and we have a fair amount of our data collected. Right now, we're reaching out to middle mile partners in the region as well as ISPs. The next step will be creating business models and partner agreements. So we expect to wrap up the project by early next year so that the region will be prepared and ready to pursue funding when it becomes available on the federal level.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Webb. Any other questions from the commission? If not, we'll need a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move the Board of Commissioners approve participation in the COPAC Regional Broadband Plan and a financial contribution of $25,000 from ARPA sources and authorize the county manager to sign the agreement.
Seconded.
Second.
Moved and seconded, the Board of Commissioners approve participation in the COPAC Regional Broadband Plan and a financial contribution of $25,000 from ARPA resources and authorize the county manager to sign the agreement. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Fantastic. Thank you, Ariane.
Thank you.
Good.
Commissioner Banks, are you going to still need your Starlink?
I really like it. It went like the speed of 98, which has never happened in my house. And so the kids were actually able to download a whole game. It was amazing.
Wow, that's great. We'll move on to the next item, which is the appointment of Board of Property Tax Appeals, the BOPTA, and the membership on page 688. And I'll turn it over to our clerk, Tracy Kurbenko.
Good evening, Commissioners. For the record, Tracy Kurbenko, County Clerk. So the issue tonight is to appoint the county governing body and the non-office holding members to the Board of Property Tax Appeals. Pursuant to ORS 309067, county governing bodies appoint 2 pools of individuals by October 15th of each year, from which I will select members of the board of the County Board of Property Tax Appeals. One pool of members must consist of either county governing body or governing body designees. In other words, it needs to be either an office holding or a non-office holding. There's 2 different pools. So the applications were asked for starting August 10th. The deadline was September 3rd. We received a total of 3 applicants, a Greg Freeman, a David Ozer, and a Clark Powers for the non-office holding position. All 3 have had prior BOPTA service. And Commissioner John Toyuka was designated to serve as the office holding board member at your January 27th, 2021 work session during liaison appointments. So each term of the member shall begin on the date of appointment and shall end on June 30th, 2022. And each BOPTA member will receive a stipend of $75 a day for their service.
Thank you, County Clerk. Any questions?
Mr. Chair, I
Commissioner
just
Thompson.
Thank you, sir. I just point out for the record, that's state law that says there's a $75 stipend, so it isn't anything that anybody has any say about. The state law mandates it.
Commissioner Toyoka didn't negotiate for it.
Nah. He might have been capable of it, but he didn't get to. So, Mr. Chair, I move to appoint I move to approve the appointment of Commissioner John Toyoka as the governing body member and appoint Greg Friedman, David Ozer, and Clark Powers to the non-office holding pool of the Board of Property Tax Appeals for the 2021-2022 year.
I second that.
It's moved and seconded to approve the appointment of Commissioner John Toyoka as the governing body member and appoint Greg Friedman, David Ozer, and Clark Powers to the non-office holding pool of the Board of Property Tax Appeals for the 2021-2022 year. All those in favor signify with an aye.
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 All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. And thank you very much, Commissioner Toyoka, for agreeing to serve on the BOPTA board there. And thank you. Do we have any items for the good of the order? Okay. Well, seeing none, we'll go ahead and give you the rest of your evening back.
Okay.
Have a good night. We'll see you later. Have a good rest of your week. Thanks again. We'll go